Hello, and good evening. Welcome. Hi. Also, witch hunters. Can you hear us? If the answer is yes, do please drop a comment saying, Andy, I can hear you. And do you always have to shout?
He does. We both do. If you've ever, I will say that was probably by far the funniest thing about us meeting in person and hanging out for a while was going, oh, we're both loud as fuck.
Yeah.
I already know if we ever are around my family, which I hope one day happens, I can just imagine my entire family having to try and resist the urge that whenever me and Andy are talking, being like, shh, use your inside voice. Because that's what they do to me and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, my household is very used to my somewhat loud exuberance, largely because I'm not the only one. My eldest daughter, whom I shan't name and shame, is just as loud, just as talkative, and just as prone to going off. And I really hope she's not watching right now, because I'm absolutely convinced she'd say, yes, that's me. But yeah, we are a loud set of people in this house, with my wife also, who is not that loud. She's quite quiet.
Also, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to post a link in chat. If you have not gone and voted yet, the vote for the official name for the Lorebeards community is currently up and running right now.
So tell me, Mr. Sotek, what exactly are the official names that have been chosen by our lovely community?
So I went into our Discord forum, which if you haven't joined, you should. And there are links to that all over the place. And if you go over there, you'll see that the first one that came up and has been around for a good while is the Lorelings, which is adorable. By far the most adorable option. You also have the much more official and glasses pushes up sounding one of Lore Seekers. The Lore Seekers.
Hello, Lore Seekers. Very much looking forward to what you have to hear from us this evening.
Yes, we then had I couldn't avoid it because she's married to one of the hosts of the show, a shot that came in from downtown, which was the Lore Fiends, which I think is
Lore Fiends!
Hey, anyway, the more accurate description of the community in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and then, I can say quite accurately that Lindsay loves Lore Fiends and it makes her a very happy person.
And then for the lovers of puns, because Warhammer is full of them, much to the misery of those of us that try and take it seriously, we have the Forlorners.
We're all so forlorn. 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 Yeah, so if you would like to vote for one of those, then please do head over to the link that has just been posted, because once one of those is chosen, it's going to change the names, obviously, over in Discord. We're over in Discord. We're going to give everybody that joins whatever name you choose. But from this point forwards, whenever the community as a whole it comes up an episode, which it does all the time, we will be referring to you as, I don't know, Forlorners, Lore Fiends, or perhaps Lorelings.
Oh. I don't like lore skin hammers. I'm going to be honest. There's something about that doesn't quite makes me think of being in a hospital.
One skin,
in a
two
way.
Skin, three skin, lore skin. That's definitely a thing
that's
that I'm not
goes.
so sure about.
But so those are the options. We would love to have y'all's vote on that. Already 1,000 people have voted, and we'd love to see even more. But we appreciate all the activity on that.
Just want to bring up this one because there was quite a few people that had it. Now, the beardlings and the various other beard options didn't do very well in the community, in that not many people voted for them. And there was also a couple of pings from here and there going, I don't think it's a very good one for the whole community because I don't have a beard, or it's not very... And I didn't really mind one way or another. We're called Lorebeards, and we have, for example, several people who are now Lorebeards who don't have beards. So I wasn't too bothered about that. But the fact that the community didn't really vote for it as a whole meant that we didn't really go for those ones. So Beardlings, as much as it might have been fun, didn't have that many people go for it. So we missed that one, for example.
Yep, and the Krimgel tests I took out back and shot.
Yeah, so there was a pretty strong drive from the Kremgeltists, who were very clear that they thought that they should take over. Now, if you've never heard of Boaty McBoatface, then you don't know why we didn't put that on the list. But put it bluntly, if you put a meme option on a list, everyone votes for the meme option. And I do indeed advise going off and checking out Boaty McBoatface, which was a very, very funny online vote.
That is a compelling argument for Lorelings, the Lorelings that make their home in the beard the beards of the Lorebeards, like little nurglings.
I just cut my beard, and I'm really not sure I want to be.
No, Laurie McLoreface? No, we
Laurie McLoreface.
Laurie McLoreface. All right, but
anyway, we should get started because we're just going to sit here and chat away rather than discuss this topic at hand, which is witch hunters. So as you all gather up, we'll grab through our first few super chats, grab into those, and then I'll dive into my intro. Quite looking forward to this one because witch hunters is a topic that. Yes.
Wait, what's today's stream subject?
Witch hunters.
Witch hunters. Those
hunters?
Yeah, those. People have been doing that to me all week, and it's like, it was funny the first time. Brox 1000, which witch hunter hunted which hunter? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that.
I feel like you could write this out into a full, like, Peter Pickle Pepper thing.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a very good in-universe joke. Grim Isaac, Warhammer 40k? Could the first episode be about the person who started Yarick and Gron? After all, he killed Gazkul's best buddy, Yarick. Did he, though? Did he kill Yarick? Because I'm hearing rumors that Yarick might actually not be dead. And is only believed dead. But...
Yeah, 40k is slowly but surely turning into the Marvel universe of characters where nobody's allowed to die.
Yeah, because they get angry emails and they don't want to deal with that. Watchdog 3079, what are your thoughts on the Wolfrut 5 edition news? So 5th edition has been announced.
On my side, I just want to sum up with it very quickly. I'm very pleased they're tidying up Warhammer 4.
Yeah, I will be very blunt. I'm gonna be really blunt, and I don't mean this in a mean way. I'm just expressing my genuine thoughts. It is very apparent to me, based on the descriptions and based on the descriptions they put out about what's going to be in the book, that unless there is a big secret that it's really just 4.5 and they're calling it 5th edition because it's a lot harder to convince people to buy something called a 4.5 edition. But it appears to be pretty much the same rule set, other than they're taking some of the LAWhammer rules. You haven't read it, have you?
I tend to avoid the news just to make sure that I don't get accidentally triggered.
The first thing I saw that made me immediately start laughing is they went, due to a better play experience, we've gotten rid of resolve and resilience and have simply rolled that into fortune and fate points. I was like, where have I seen that before?
So the first draft of the rules had no resolve and resilience in it. Because it was added later. That's hilarious. I'm just not going to get into this whole thing. So,
we'll move on.
On my side, obviously very strongly associated with the 4th edition, I cannot express how much I think the game needs an update. My plan was to revamp and redo, essentially make a 4.5 in the archives. The archive set of books that came out with a bunch of streamlining options that could be used to make the game run much more smoothly at the table. So it's super pleasing to me to hear that they're actually doing that. Now, whether it's 4.5, whether it's actually a 5, I don't really care. They're running the license, not me. They can do whatever they want with it. And I'm quite happy to hear that they'll hopefully be streamlining and making the core rule set run a bit more smoothly by, for example, taking LAWhammer rules.
Yeah, I hope it's good. I genuinely very, very deeply hope it's good. I'm a little worried at some of the editing and formatting of some of their most recent books. So I hope it's good. I hope they take their time with it and they make it really good, because the 4th core book is pretty good. I just need to see it. I just need to see it. I can't really
see what happens.
Jen, what do the hunters think of our glorious heroes? I'm assuming you're talking about the LAWhammer glorious heroes.
So for those of you who don't watch LAWhammer, this is going to be one giant WTF, but loosely speaking, our glorious heroes all look like glorious heroes. But the more that's revealed about them over time, the more you realize that the word glorious and the word hero is perhaps not best used as the descriptor for them. If we took their characters as they actually are, and not how they present themselves, all of them, bar one, would be hunted down and burnt.
Yeah, I will say, as someone that plays a witch hunter in my weekly Wolfrup campaign, my character would be trying to kill the glorious heroes of the LAWhammer Guild, because they are insane. It would be like, no, they have to go.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Bonfoot, is it true that witches have itches? Many of them
And
do.
stitches.
Yes. Yeah. They get stitches for those itches that they scratch too much. Dumbo, Andy, often wearing a hat, suspicious knowledge of forbidden lore, rabid hatred for our supreme patriarch. His hat's not nearly wide brimmed enough.
It's the truth. It's the truth. My hat, although I could just, pull it out. No, that looks ridiculous. I mean, it looks ridiculous enough as it is. I think I'll just stick with what I have.
Necromancer Cobalt, super excited to learn about the special force of the Warhammer world with drip so immaculate it transcended time into 40k. It did, which is always very funny. The Witch Hunters in 40k look exactly like, other than they have maybe like a mechanical eyepiece, they tend to look the exact same as their fantasy counterparts.
True fact.
Boogeyman, do greenskins wah when they sense a global surge in combat? For example, due to large chaos invasions, especially in the end times, I can imagine the rowdiness of the world increases a lot. Greenskins could sense this and it would rile them up.
Yes. I mean, loosely, yes.
Loosely,
not
yes.
Specifically. But yeah, the more conflict that there is near a greenskin, the more likely it is that the greenskin's going to get all riled up and get ready for a good fight. Which means, in turn, the more likely more greenskins around them are going to get riled up. Which, in turn, means it's much more likely that a big wah begins to build up. Now, does it mean it happens every time? No. Does it mean that it likely could happen? Yes. It all depends on the circumstances on the ground. Do we get a warlord that rises up above all the others? The answer is often just simply no, because they're too busy beating living crap out of each other, and no one manages to reach the point where they establish dominance. It does require someone to become the focal point of that great wah before a great wah occurs. So the answer is sort of yes, in that greenskins do indeed get riled up by lots of combat, but that does not necessarily mean we'll get a big wah.
How much of bribe money for us to be called the assholes? I cannot allow that option to go through. If you want to think of yourselves as that, I can't stop you from what you call yourself.
That's 100% true. I did say assholes the other day.
The Boogeyman, colleges of magic, lots of spellcasters, lots of spell casting, consistent amount of miscasting, demons popping up every other day. The colleges of magic are dangerous. I will say that. Yeah. I will say that living near some of the colleges of magic can be very dangerous, and I will leave it at that.
So this one here specifically, the colleges of magic themselves, the actual buildings, are much safer than other parts of the empire. It's one of the reasons that a great deal of the magical learning happens at the colleges themselves. They have been specifically prepared, set up for teaching magic and ensuring that the worst extremes of what magic can result in do not occur. And that ranges right from the very top with the Obsidian Chamber, where they do most of the most important wizard dueling. The Obsidian Chamber dulls down not just the spell, so that what would normally be fatal instead just becomes rather showy and explosive rather than actually fatal. Right down to just how the college buildings themselves are pretty much set up to keep demons out, ensure that miscasts don't go too badly, blah, 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 blah. So loosely, colleges of magic, yes. Lots of spellcasters, yes. Lots of spellcasting, yes. Consistent amount of miscasting, yes. Demons popping up every other day, no.
Yeah.
It was fine until you hit the end. So you were close.
Funny enough, you're more likely to have demon problems because of all of the not so great college sanctioned wizards that are like in the sewers and them messing around with stuff, because there's a ton of them.
Yeah.
Boogeyman, why no long neck dinosaurs of the lizardmen? They canonically exist, they're just not in the playable list. They could be shooting platforms that carry old one devices like the mental picture of a long neck dinosaur that can shoot a beam of energy from its mouth. Either scorching infantry right below or as long range artillery police to snipe up enemy monsters given zap cannon. So there's always you could actually find, I don't remember which white dwarf it is, but there is a white dwarf where it was a pitched version of like a thunder lizard, and it was like a big long neck crazy dinosaur that had like a bunch of platforms on its back, and it literally had a giant lizardman army on its back as it was like stomping around. You also have the Arcanodon, which was meant to be a longer neck dinosaur, but they used it by kit bashing Stegodon and Carnosaur bits together. So they tried to give it a long neck, but it's not that long of a neck. But the intent was for it to have a long neck, but it's a kit bash, and it shoots like these orbs of energy from a device on its back that blow up like big catapult shots. So this kind of stuff exists. It's just not the focal point of the army.
And if you want a specific why, because that's a lot of plastic.
Yeah, that type of dinosaur is hard to make.
Most of the plastic kits are just nice, tight blocks that sit in a sphere of about this. Big, long, stretchy things don't make for the best kits in the Warhammer battlefield. So they tend to focus on the ones that are much tighter.
Okay, we're just going to do a few more of these. I've seen you guys complain at times about lore hinted at but never fleshed out. While I would love to see incorrections up myself, I feel Warhammer needs areas of the world, stories, characters, etc. that remain unexplained and mysterious. I would hate for Warhammer 10 to 30 years now to have been explained to a science. That'll never happen. They can always make up new characters and stories, but if the core timelines and continents are all figured out and revealed, it would feel like less. So I loosely agree with this, but I don't think entire continents need to be sealed off. I think you can have large sections of countries and lands that are never really that well explained, and kept awfully mysterious. And you can have like certain islands and other very places, like the Chaos Wastes are always going to be very mysterious and strange. There will be parts of a lot of the world that are mysterious and strange. But I think having entire continents left unexplored, or like large entire countries of space unexplored, I think that's odd, because it makes it feel like unless there's something keeping that part of the world like walled off somehow, to me that's strange. I don't like that personally. That's just me.
Sure.
1.21 gigawins. Does it make sense for a witch hunter to learn lingua prestantia just for dispelling? Do you need magical ability to dispel, or is knowing the language simply enough?
No. Nope, you need magical ability. If you can't cast spells, you can't dispel either. A lot of dispelling there's different methods of dispelling. Some of them involve throwing a spell directly into the incoming spell, others involving channeling magic into them, but dispelling requires the ability to use magic. Simply using and saying the right words don't do anything. It's not like, for example, a movie where someone just opens a book and goes, "Oh, Libar Asti Mek Lekotha," and suddenly magic starts occurring. It's not the words that have the power alone, it's the words combined with a soul that can trigger it and make it go poof. So, no. But many witch hunters, arguably, are latent witches anyway, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, Wolford Forum seems to imply knowing the language is okay. That would not be enough to actually dispel. Now, knowing aspects of magic, the magical tongue, could be useful for witch hunters, but for other reasons.
Yeah, you need channeling skill as well.
Necromancer Kobold, how many police tropes from history and fiction is wrapped up into the witch hunters, and how much of a hodgepodge of secret police are they?
We'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Why do they dress like that, though? Because it's fucking sick.
Get to that. I'll get to that too.
I am going to run to the restroom real quick because I have to, while Andy does his intro. Hooray!
That's perfect. I'm almost tempted to kick him off the screen, so I have the screen all to myself. All right, witch hunters. Witch hunters. And the joke that comes along with it, witch hunters, is it those or those? Come hand in hand, because most people, when they think of witch hunters, think of the classic Warhammer witch hunter with our pointy hat, our Sigmarite symbol burning away on their big wide brims and their pistols as they stomp out into their battlefield with their long leather boots. However, that's not what the majority of witch hunters are in the Empire, or indeed in Warhammer as a whole. So we've got quite a lot to potentially discuss today. Not only do we have that type of witch hunter to discuss, which is not just a legitimate type, it's one of the core types that Warhammer offers, but we have a lot of other things to talk about too. Witch hunters is going to be a core component of what we actually are going to be discussing through the course of this particular stream. But if you want to have the history of witch hunters, which, as anyone who watches our streams know, I kind of love diving into. Witch hunters in Warhammer start in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1, first edition. Now, they've been mentioned before that. Witch hunters and people that hunt down nasties in the Warhammer world had propped up here and there all over the place as various miniatures and various background bits and bobs for early Warhammer. But the first place where they became properly codified and we got to go, yes, I can play a witch hunter now, was in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay first edition, where it defined a witch hunter as a relatively stern-faced individual who was hunting down chaos. And these chaos hunters, not witch hunters, chaos hunters, were known throughout the old world as a whole for being grim, for being somewhat murderous, and for, well, hunting down chaos and seeing chaos behind everything. It also has another fun little note, which for those of you who love your older versions of Warhammer, it will make you smile. And witch hunters were also marked as hunting down people who had perhaps crossbred with orcs. They didn't like half orcs very much. Witch hunters were half-orc hunters as well. Now, they obviously don't exist anymore, but they did exist back then, and it gives you a bit of an idea of what the witch hunter trope is from at least the early days of Warhammer. And that's a group of people who hunt down anything that others thought were wrong, in particular, chaos. It wasn't associated with Sigmar at all. It was just associated with people who hunted down chaos, and any species pretty much could be a witch hunter. Anyone could be a witch hunter, because ultimately anyone could hunt down chaos, because chaos, as we all recognize as people who understand Warhammer, is a bad thing. And the witch hunter pretty much kept this as an idea. When the 4th edition of Warhammer came out, there was no witch hunters in the Empire army. The Sigmar was not really a core component of the Empire army either. There was a Sigmar special character, the Grand Theogenist. There was also Magnus the Pious as a special character, and maybe a knightly order or two that you could add that had Sigmar, but there was more orders for like Ulrich and Myrmidia than there was for Sigmar. So the witch hunter as a Sigmarite didn't arrive until Warhammer Quest. Now, Warhammer Quest, for those of you who don't know, was Games Workshop's attempt to make a dungeon bash game. I remember when this game came out, because I remember a big meeting where everyone was gathered up down into Nottingham. And we had ourselves a lovely speech by a chap called John Stallard. You don't need to know the details. But John Stallard came up and said, this game is better than D&D, and it will beat D&D. Not joking. Literally what we were told.
Wow.
Yeah, totally. And it was basically a dungeon bash where you got a party of up to 4 people going down into a randomly generated dungeon. And it was super Warhammer, super fun. Loads of fun, cool extras were added to it. And one of those extras was the Witch Hunter. And they completely repurposed what Witch Hunter meant in Warhammer, where beforehand it was an anti-chaos Witch Hunter. When it came to Warhammer Quest version, which came out in 1996, it was a pilgrim. I mean, he was a witch hunter right out of some sort of US fairy tale version of Warhammer, who looked like he may have been shipped over from the UK at some point with a very witch hunter general version of himself. If you've ever seen the movie with, oh, I forget, it's called The Witchfinder. What's it called? What's his name? The actor who plays him. Oh, it's really annoying.
I don't know, but you are right. The witch hunters came straight off Plymouth Rock.
Yeah, they really did. If anyone's out there who can remember the name, he's an incredibly famous horror actor. Vincent Price. Vincent Price played the Witchfinder General. And in the Witchfinder General, they basically, thank you very much, John T. Scarecrow, for bringing up Vincent Price. Thanks. And these were really, really, really coded with buckles in there. I mean, a Sigmarite symbol in their hat, with their pistols from that era, and dialing up the witch huntery vibe. But the witch hunters inside Warhammer Quest could also do something else. They could empower their magical charms. And these charms gave them lots of powers that were effectively anti-chaos and could burn things, destroy undead. Basically, they took all of the benefits of a priest. There was also a Warhammer priest, a warrior priest character, obviously a Sigmarite. Took all of the benefits of the priest, but mixed them with a warrior with pistols. How fucking cool is that? Let's go to town. Go check it up. It's a fun character to play in Warhammer Quest. Just type Warhammer Quest Witch Hunter. You'll see it come up, and you will see what every single Warhammer model copies from that point onwards in that single miniature. Because this defines Witch Hunter for many people in the Warhammer creative side for years. It wouldn't, however, be until 2001 until this was picked up and taken further. In 2001, we got ourselves the first of the Witch Hunter stories. Now, you may or may not be aware of the Witch Hunter stories. They're called, the first novel is called Witch Hunter. But before the first novel came out, there was some short stories in the Inferno magazine. And Inferno number 22 back in 2001 had the very first one, which was called I forget its name. I've got it written down. Choice of Hatreds, I think. It was the Choice of Hatreds. I just checked it out just to make sure I wasn't wrong. Choice of Hatreds. And a second story in issue 35 with the same character, Matthias Thulman, was dropped. So that's the Meat Wagon story. It's a lovely story, Meat Wagon. And these witch hunters and the Witch Hunter, the full novel that came afterwards from the novel Witch Hunter, were coded in exactly the same way as the one that came from Warhammer Quest, but took things much further. They organized an entire Sigmarite order around it that they called the Order of the Silver Hammer. And these Templars of Sigmar, as they were named, became the Witch Hunters of Sigmar that were hunting down all the various nasties in the Empire. But for those who already knew Warhammer lore, this really, really upset them. You might go, why? What's wrong with that? Well, first, Templars of Sigmar means guys in armor, top to toe, who are Templars of Sigmar. They're the knights, and there's various temple orders of Sigmar already, so people are already going, but they're not real Templars, but I'll let you off. But the other bit was even more annoying. The Knights Templar, stolen on one side, but the Order of the Silver Hammer on the other. The Order of the Silver Hammer had been established in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition and was very cleanly described as the warrior priests. This is what the warrior priests of Sigmar were. So you know all those images you get of the warrior priests? They're the Order of the Silver Hammer. And then the novel came out and went, I don't know about that. I just learned that this order exists and I'm using it for my witch hunter. Thanks. We're done. That's what they are. And they ran with it. Which meant that when the book that came out describing the witch hunters and indeed all the various creatures that they would hunt down, they ran with the Order of the Silver Hammer there. And then I had to come along in 2007 and try to figure out how to make the Order of the Silver Hammer and the Order of the Silver Hammer, the Templars of Sigmar and the Templars of Sigmar, and the witch hunters all exist. That was my job. And I did. This is what I wrote into the... my job was to fix Sigmar. I literally was told that. I got an email saying, Andy, fix Sigmar. Lots of writers have taken it in different directions. We now need to make it all make sense. So I did. And you'll find inside the Tome of Salvation, there's a description of the Templars of Sigmar, the Knightly Orders of Sigmar. There's a description of how the witch hunters came from the Order of the Silver Hammer and were just a part of, they weren't the whole order. And the warrior priests of Sigmar were still the knights of the Knights of the Silver Hammer, the Order of the Silver Hammer. But they had an offshoot, which was the witch hunters. And there was witch hunter preceptor lodges or temples or whatever you want to call it, attached to each one of the major temples of Sigmar in the Empire. So we combined it all together and made it make sense. That's often been my job down through the editions. And you might go, okay, right, we've got the idea. So we've got our novels. They took some old lore and they reinterpreted it into a new way. You fixed it all up. And does anything change later? Well, kinda. Throughout the course of this, we get ourselves a lot more focus on witch hunters because of the battle game. The battle game added witch hunters as a core character option inside Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And by the time we hit 7th and 8th edition, they are now just a core character that you find in all Empire armies.
So, interestingly, the Witch Hunter character isn't actually in any of... It's not in 6th edition or 7th edition. It's only in 8th.
Is it not in 7th? Is it only in 8th?
Just purely 8th.
Yeah, I have like 4 of them for my Empire army. It is only 8th.
They're great. They're awesome, but yeah.
Yeah, totally. So they come very late in the day, and they come late in the day because of the popularity, obviously, of the witch hunters over in both Black Library and their long established history inside the Empire. And again, they are really coded Sigmar. But that's not what all witch hunters are. Like, at all. In fact, not only is that not what all witch hunters are, they're only one small order. Now, to give you a counterexample, to see if we can make this clear. If I was to say to you, Knights of the Empire, the Knightly Orders, you'd go, okay, yeah, cool. All right, the Knightly Orders. Now, if you've played any of the war games, he said, covering his camera to get back into focus. That didn't work at all. If you've played any of the war games, you'll be aware that there's... I'm just blurry now. That's who I am. I'm Andy the Blur. If you've played any of the war games, you'll be aware there's lots of different Knightly Orders in the Empire. And if you've played Total War, you'll be aware that there's various knightly orders as well in the Empire. If you've played the roleplay game, you'll be aware there's various knightly orders. But if I said to you, no, knights are the Reichsguard. That's what knights are. And if I brought up a topic today and I said, the topic today is Empire Knights, and I only discussed the Reichsguard, you would go, what about all the other knightly orders? What are you talking about, Andy? You've forgotten all the lore. And that's what we have with witch hunters. If you play a witch hunter, for example, in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, you are not necessarily playing a Sigmarite. You are, in fact, more likely not to be, because most of the cults have got their own form of witch hunters. The colleges of magic have got their own form of witch hunter called a Magister Vigilant. But they are pale in insignificance to the true witch hunters, the biggest number of them, which are state-sponsored ones. Now, you might go, oh, wait a minute, witch hunters are state-sponsored, I know. And your back of your head might be going, the Sigmarites, the Templars of Sigmar, they're state-sponsored. They are. They are not illegal across the various parts of the Empire, for example. But by state-sponsored, I mean the equivalent of bounty hunters. People who are paid to hunt down witches, or indeed chaos, or indeed anything else, the bad guys. Now, the bounty hunters by far outnumber all of the other witch hunters added together. So if we're discussing witch hunters, which we are today, we cannot just discuss the Reichsguard. I mean, we cannot just discuss the Templars of Sigmar, the witch hunters, the Order of the Silver Hammer, and how it's got a small faction that does witch hunting. We can't just discuss those. We have to discuss witch hunting as a whole as well, and how it manifests, not just in the Empire, but potentially elsewhere. Although, whenever people think of witch hunters, they generally think of the Empire version. And that, in many respects, goes all the way back to first edition, where it's quite clear. It's those who hunt down chaos, and either do it for personal reasons or who are paid to do it. And then when we re-described them in the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, we were pretty clear in our description. They mix between those who do it for their own religious reasons, because they have a religious imperative to hunt down certain types of evil. The Cult of Sigmar really has this strong. They hunt down the undead, they hunt down greenskins, they hunt down chaos. They are often hunting down the enemies of Sigmar. So they have a strong witch hunting branch, but they're not the only ones. Cult of Mor has many witch hunters who are out there to hunt down necromancers. They are witches, remember. Magister Vigilance from the Colleges of Magic, as mentioned already. These are witches who hunt witches. It's their job to pursue black magisters, those who have fallen outside of the college's remit and are doing something deeply illegal, and the colleges come to pick it up. And they often work hand in hand with the Cult of Sigmar, which may surprise many of you out there who often think of Sigmarites as witch burning, never deal with witches, rah, rah, rah. No, the Cult of Sigmar has an oversight committee, effectively, over the Colleges of Magic, and they work with the Colleges of Magic to hunt down witches. You often find witch hunters, the classic hat, wide brim ones, are working with wizards to hunt down other witches, because, as was noted in our early comments, they can't dispel magic unless they've got their own holy wards and charms, which, by the way, many do. So if they don't have a method of stopping magic, they work with other witches who do. Now, they might not like them, particularly given their job, but many of them form, as is often the case when people get together, fast friendships. So we've got state-sponsored, as in our bounty hunters who are responsible for hunting down all manner of evil as the state itself dictates. We've got cults who do it. And then we've got the individuals who, for their own personal reasons, are hunting down things that they consider to be wrong with the world. I remember back when we were doing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition, there was a desire to create a broader bounty hunter, witch hunter style character. As in people who hunted monsters, people who hunted down witches, people who hunted vampires. Vampire hunters, a very common thing to say. And to wrap it all up inside one career, which was resisted quite strongly from certain quarters as well. And there was a reason for that at the time, because The Witcher was growing in popularity significantly. And the idea of having somebody who hunted down monsters, much like The Witcher, was there, because The Witcher is in many respects a witch hunter also, except it's not really, it's more of a monster hunter. But the conflation here is understandable because they're all sort of doing a similar job. They're being paid to hunt down bad people, bounty hunters. The majority of witch hunters in Warhammer are actually bounty hunters. And that's something that's worth knowing as we dive into everything we're going to discuss today, where we will obviously focus some time on the Order of the Silver Hammer, on the Templars, because we have to. There's entire books dedicated around these characters, and they took our witch hunters in a different direction. One that had been started with Warhammer Quest and then driven off into deeply influence how witch hunters are perceived pretty much across Warhammer's board. But right up to the most recent games, witch hunters are much deeper than that alone, and we have state-sponsored bounty hunter style witch hunters across the Empire and further, who we should also spend at least a little bit of time discussing, because these are the sorts of characters you actually play if you play the roleplay game, where the battle game you'll be stuck with are big the iconic witch hunter. You'll be stuck with those. If you're playing the roleplay game, it's a much broader topic.
Yep. All right, we're gonna get caught up on super chat stuff that came in while we were doing that. Kaboom! Skylar Martin. Are there witch hunters of other faiths? Yes. What consequences do witch hunters have of accusing other faiths of heresy? Also, Warhammer novel recommendations.
Okay, so Skylar, the important word here is a word that many people get confused by in Warhammer, and that's heresy. What does heresy mean? In the real world, heresy has some pretty strongly defined terminology and exactly what it means in practice. And it's often, you don't agree with my religion, that's heresy. That isn't the case in Warhammer. It's a polytheistic world. Heresy means something quite different. Heresy is chaos. That is heresy. It's not doing things differently to my cult. So if you accuse another faith of heresy, you're saying that they are trafficking with the ruinous powers. And if they are, they probably deserve what's coming to them. The answer is almost there.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that this is one of those things where, like, there's a big difference between 40K and fantasy, where 40K, their terminology when they're using heresy is much more like our world's terminology, where it's, you don't agree with me. Whereas in fantasy, it's more about you are consorting with ruinous powers or like undead and other nasty stuff.
Absolutely. Heresy in Warhammer doesn't mean the same thing. I mean, if you just used it in the same way that the real world used it, it would mean almost nothing, because there are so many different cults, all of whom work together on a day-to-day basis. And often these cults have a very different views on what the world should be. The core standard beliefs that each of the cults hold often contradict each other, and they don't call each other heretics all the time. It's just they all have different gods that they're working towards, fulfilling whatever goals that they have ahead of them. Heresy is not that in Warhammer. Heresy is the chaos gods.
Yeah. That being said, you are quite likely to probably find individuals that use the term very broadly.
Oh yeah,
we'll
I mean, particularly if you look at some of the more fanatical cults. If we take a look at how many of the witch hunters from, say, Sigmar work.
Yeah, like the Order of the Cleansing Flame. They are.
Yeah, they're the Inquisitors of Sigmar. Now, they will often define heresy as anything that they define as evil and wrong, which means that they will take heresy and not just attach it to chaos. They might attach it to, say, greenskins or necromancy and other things, because as far as they're concerned, that stands against everything that their god holds as important to keeping the Empire together. Are they using the term correctly? No, not at all. The term heresy is pretty clearly defined in Warhammer, and that's bringing about the attention of the Dark Gods and Ruinous Powers.
Yep. Warhammer novel recommendations. I mean, if you want witch hunters, there's the Matthias Folman trilogy, which has been organized now into a really nice omnibus, which is just the Witch Hunter omnibus. So if you want a lot of witch hunter stuff, that it's a big old set of stories. So you can't
I
go
want to
wrong with
bring
that.
up one comment from Benjamin here because I think it's a good one. Wait, isn't there stuff like the Sigmarian heresy that's not intrinsically chaotic? Strangely enough, the Sigmarian heresy is intrinsically chaotic because it comes from chaos. But you'll find that the word heresy is often used in its real world connotation in lots of writing, i.e., this is a group within an established cult that believes something different to the rest, and it's often attached to the word heresy. But when characters are using the term heresy, as in you're a heretic, out loud, it is generally speaking chaos. But not always, because not all writers conform to the same standards. Much like everything Warhammer, depending on who the editor is or the writer, you end up finding words being deployed for different things all over the place, meaning that there is no real consistency. Some people use the real world meaning of heresy, which means I am a believer of this, you are in the same cult as me and you believe something different, you are a heretic. Now, the reason that they often believe that is because you should know what the gods want, because the gods are real, they've passed on their message, and if you are saying something separate to that, then clearly the dark gods have whispered in your ear a falsehood and a lie. So you can very easily understand how the word heresy can be attached to it without needing to change that chaos implication. They're basically saying, by calling them a heretic, your version of beliefs have been perverted by the ruinous powers, you're in the wrong and I'm in the right.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, especially when you're reading through like Black Library books, you'll see authors use very different definitions for things. But it's just like how it's not unusual to come across an author that instead of saying like the Temple of Sigmar, which they're supposed to say, they'll say the Church of Sigmar, which they're not supposed to say.
Or instead of using church, instead of using cult, they use church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Temporera, an unsuspecting cultist just going about his day. Ah, what a lovely day to get up to some heretical shenanigans. A second later, Saltspire from Vermintide kicks in the door and pulls out his special gun. Yeah, Saltspire is actually an interesting character that we'll have a little bit of a side thing here. But one of the things that's really interesting about witch hunters is that a lot of people underestimate how much conflict there is within their own orders. That because they're particularly zealous, it's pretty normal for them to get in very deep theological debates and disagreements, which can lead to some nasty situations. Saltspire was kind of exiled in a lot of ways. He was almost outcast from the Witch Hunter orders because he was openly talking about Skaven, and many of the other aspects of the Hunters thought he was insane. Because they don't believe Skaven are real, and he's out here rambling about them, and they're like, "You sound like a madman."
Literal Vermintide.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of interesting like disagreements and different focuses within the various orders, where a lot of people think they're more monolithic, and they're really not. Like many witch hunters will have very different degrees that they operate on. And some of them will prioritize one type of enemy above all others, and think that those that don't agree with them are fools that are being misguided and yada, yada, yada. They're a fairly interesting bunch of, because they have, in some way, many ways, their zealotry kind of protects them from a lot of the horrors that they engage in. When they're written well, they could be a pretty interesting little squad of weirdos. A lot of the time.
I just want to bring up one there from Mihao as well. Different witch hunters and priests may also have different opinion of what heresy is. In Angelica Fleischer's novels, good novels by the way, Priest of Sigmar considers Shellians as heretics wasting their powers. I think this is bad. Genuinely think it's bad. Fine for an individual to think this, but I think it's a bad use of the word heretic because it makes no sense in a polytheistic world. They are constantly going to believe that others who have a different set of religious views to them are not best using their stuff, but to call them heretics, I just don't feel it's a very good use of the word. I do, however, have no issues with individual characters deploying the word like that. So individual characters within novels can do that fine, but it effectively weakens the word and gives it very little real strength in Warhammer, because we start thinking of it in a real world sense, which basically means that this priest of Sigmar probably thinks all other cults are heretics then. All of them, because they all do stuff that are not anything close to Sigmarism, and in many respects stand against Sigmarism. for one reason or another. The Ulricans will be heretics because they're far too forward in their attacks. The Varenans are heretics because they keep holding the Sigmarites back and they think about justice rather than the true meaning of Sigmar's law. And I could go through all of the cults and say the same thing. I do not think that's a good use of heretic in terms of the overall use, the general term, and how it should be deployed. But as a specific individual for use, sure, fine.
Yep. 1.21 gigawins. How well known are the properties of obsidian outside the colleges? Do witch hunters use chips of it and bullets or make arrowheads from it commonly?
Yes, some. And the use of obsidian is relatively esoteric knowledge because unlike the real world where obsidian pops up all over the fucking place, obsidian in the Warhammer world tends to not, for reasons that we have yet to truly understand. In that there is a bunch of it here and there, and it tends to get taken up by those in the know relatively quickly, meaning that it's hard to just get hold of and give to your witch hunter orders and similar. So it's relatively well known by those in the know, not well known by your average state witch hunter, although some of them probably are aware of it, but probably in a more almost legendary way, as in, I think this works, but they also probably think that if they, I don't know, wrap cheese around their head, that it'll keep away various demons, or sniff a particular herb, that they're going to somehow not succumb to a necromantic spell. The superstition is everywhere in Warhammer, and the truth of obsidian will be hidden behind a great many layers of superstition. But would some of them do this? Absolutely.
Yeah, this would be more a witch hunter that is in like a well-funded order that probably works hand in hand with the colleges of magic would probably definitely be aware of this. And if they have the funding or the ability, would likely have maybe like an obsidian dagger or something on them.
Obsidian manacles in particular, because that stops spellcasting. It stops channeling. So but obsidian manacles or an obsidian, like any binding of obsidian around a wizard, it's going to really screw with their day. So would very good witch hunters have this? If they could keep it, yes. But you got to remember that this anti-magical obsidian stuff is something that wizards can kind of feel as well. It makes them feel sick. So yeah, they're going to probably be avoiding that shit and destroying it, taking it, using it. It's difficult to keep it. Because it's useful.
Yeah. It's not a common material in the world, is what I would say there. At least that in the Empire.
In some parts of the world.
Yeah, some parts.
In some parts, it's everywhere.
Salter, not witch hunter related, but I was reminded to bring up the new Lizardman book, which is happy news for all of us. First time.
I was really amused by who's writing it. Adrian, he's been on Inside the Rookery like
three
times.
I saw that. I was like, where have I heard that name? Where have I? Oh, Adrian.
So if you want to know more about Adrian, we've had interviews with him over on Inside the Rookery. He's a lovely guy. He's a friend of the Rookery. He's been in several times. He is a master of writing not humans.
I'm so excited.
And building up non-human societies and making them feel real and lived in. So I think he is potentially perfectly chosen to do this particular type of book. So fingers crossed this will land really well. Adrian's the best. And if you haven't watched those, go watch Inside the Rookery. For goodness sake, go subscribe to our channel over there because we cover some really cool stuff.
Yes, and as this Salter wants me to bring up for the first time, and because the 50th anniversary of Warhammer is only in like 8 years, y'all. It's coming up quick. And this is the first Lizardman protagonist book, and I'm so excited. Godric the Grafted, what's the protocol if a witch hunter discovers a non-chaos, non-undead, non-empire spy, such as a Bretonnian or a Kislevite spy? Thanks as always.
So basically, a spy.
Yeah.
Okay, witch hunters have nothing to do with spies. It's literally not their jurisdiction, and unless that spy is doing it, they'd have as much authority and right to do anything as any other citizen of the Empire. In that, most citizens have a surprising amount of authority, and this might surprise, because the police in Warhammer, for want of a word, police, the Watch, don't police. They don't go around policing things. When somebody steals from someone else, no one cares. It's up to the individuals who've had stuff stolen to basically drag people up to a magistrate or equivalent and say, oi, this person stole it. And then the judge makes a judgment as to whether it actually happened or not. The Watch aren't the ones doing this. Most of the Watch are there to just keep the Emperor's peace, the Pax Imperica, Imperialis, if you will. And they're there to basically stop riots, to put people down when they're doing stuff, and to keep stuff from happening. They're more of a preventative thing than an actual investigative thing. Now, there are some permanent groups of watch in the Empire, like, for example, in Altdorf, in Middenheim, the Dogfaces over in Talabheim. They do have investigators, but most of the investigators are actually cult investigators or private hires, meaning that they don't have any right to do anything other than drag them up before a judge and get the judge to do the judgment on it. Spying, of course, is exceedingly difficult to prove, meaning that in the vast majority, there's nothing here to prove. Most spies are such a modern contrivance in how easy they are to identify and catch. They aren't easy to identify and catch. Most spies are just basically foreigners in everybody's eyes.
Yeah, and I think most witch hunters you would deal with probably wouldn't really care. Or if the spy was doing something egregious enough that they did care, most witch hunters...
What is a spy? I mean, every noble is a spy. They come into somebody else's court, they learn gossip, go back, and they spread it. I mean, that is a spy. Our modern understanding of spy is really difficult to pin down in terms of a medieval society or some equivalent.
The only people that tend to really care about spies are people that employ other spies. So a witch hunter, I don't think a witch hunter would care, to be really honest.
Witch hunter, I mean, unless they are doing something that is particularly, like, for example, a spy for a chaos cult. Oh, now we're talking. This is my job now. I'm here to stop you looking into finding out these secrets so you can come up with your cunning plan. They'll be right all over them.
Yeah, so if you're dealing with like a spy that is a hired agent of like the Purple Hand, then a witch hunter is going to give a big fuck.
Yeah. Totally.
Brom, my introduction to Warhammer was through playing Saltspire, and he showed me how interesting and deep a regular human could serve in a fantasy universe. Praise Sigmar and death to heretics. Yeah, Saltspire, I mean, to be fair, Saltspire's job is much easier than most witch hunters because he's living in the end time, so chaos is fucking everywhere.
Everywhere.
So he's working overtime at all times. But yeah, he's great.
Yeah, true fact.
But genuinely asking, what do witch hunters think about fishmen? Most of them would not think fishmen exist.
No, and you know what? I don't think that's even true. And by that I mean, if somebody came up to them out of the sea and said they were a walking, talking fish, they'd probably go, yeah, mutant or species I've never encountered yet. You've got to remember, it's a fantasy world where there's all sorts of crazy shit. They literally wouldn't care. What they would care about, though, is are they, bad guys to the Empire, or bad guys to the people that I come from? Yeah, and if the answer is yes, then
If you said, there's a army of fishmen that are attacking this port over here, they'd go, oh, well, I should probably go over there and shoot some fishmen.
Yeah, totally.
But if you're like trying to convince them, like, oh, there's a group of organized fishmen that live in the River Reich, they'd be like, all right, sure. Sure.
Well, that sounds like mutant nonsense. They might try to look into the mutants. Yeah,
you probably saw a squad of mutants that are pirating on the river. We'll look into it. All right, get out of
here. Yeah.
On the whole, as well as happened across the visitors, all of them. If they found a village in thrall to an outside, strange, evil force, there would witch hunters would do something. They'd be active, and it probably would not end well for said village. Downman, off topic, very important. I found a leak of the alternative version of the end times after the Battle of Middenheim. Arcana travels the lost temple of the old ones and correct. There, he finds the last remaining old one who looks suspiciously like a Shiba Inu dog pressing a bunch of buttons on an 80s styles computer system. Get out of my chat. I finished Silent Hill 2 yesterday, and we were looking at the different endings, and there's a dog ending that is insane. I don't understand how the Japanese come up with the ideas they come up with sometimes. They have a very unique imagination.
Sure.
Skylar Martin, what would happen if a witch hunter, presumably I think you mean a Sigmar witch hunter, butts heads with another cult? As Sigmarism is the most powerful cult in the Empire, it's not. Where does the law end?
Okay, there is definitely an interesting point there. Powerful. I would definitely say numerous. There's more Sigmarites, as in more people in the cult of Sigmar than all the other cults, sure. Power, though, is interesting. It depends entirely on what we're talking about, because in different spheres, power means different things. If we're talking about the realm of death and how to handle grief, death, and the passing of people from the end of their life into whatever happens next, Sigmarism means nothing. It's the cult of Mor, and they're the most powerful. So I think powerful is perhaps an interesting word to use here, and one I probably wouldn't. The other part, though, is much easier. Where does the law end? Where it's written. So law is a codified set of rules, and in the Empire falls underneath the sphere of two cults primarily, and many other smaller cults as well. So the two most common cults are the cult of Sigmar, who very much believe in the word of Sigmar, which is the foundation point of law in the Empire, his words and how he started up the Empire. And they believe in the word of the law. Then you've got the cult of Verena, the goddess of wisdom and justice, and she believes in doing what's just and right, and judges are a core component of doing what's just and right, where a judge sits over the facts of a case with the law acting as a guiding point and judges what is right to occur. A Sigmarite judge is different. They go, what did the law say? So now you're guilty because you've transgressed the law. But there's mitigating circumstances. Don't care. Where on the Verena side, they go, yes, but the law's here for a reason. It's to guide our principles. And our principles say that we should be doing what's right, and you're in a difficult position, so your judgment will be this. Verenans and Sigmarites often butt heads as to how to interpret. Where does the law begin and end there? In court. And interestingly, the High Law Lord, the one who makes all the most important choices in the Empire, is a Verenan, not a Sigmarite. So if you want to know where the law ends in the Empire, ultimately Verena and the nobles that sit at the very top. Now, the nobles are very strongly supported by the cult of Sigmar, but also the cult of Verena, because the nobles hold many rights because of the law. And the cult of Verena supports it. Long story short here, there is a law, and there's a whole host of proper established processes in place for how to deal with things. And the cult of Sigmar has to sit within this also. If Sigmarites break the law, they get yanked before judges as much as anybody else does, but they often will try to claim that they have cult law to represent them, as in, we have transgressed laws, so the cult deals with it, not the normal courts. And then that's where we get ourselves all sorts of difference of opinion.
Yeah, one of the things that's really interesting about witch hunters is that, and I think this is mainly due to the Black Library books. The Black Library books are really bad about this. Is that the Black Library books will very much portray witch hunters as a secret police ultimate authority figure who literally can just show up, kick in the door to an Elector Count's estate, walk up and say, that Elector Count's a heretic, and shoot him in the face and get away with it. When in the actual reality of the setting, they tend to operate they rely on, a lot of the time, they kind of rely on people being too ill-educated and stupid to know what their actual authority is. Because a lot of what they're doing is actually illegal.
Yeah, agreed completely. Many witch hunters act outside of the law, significantly outside the law. And we're talking not just Sigmarite ones, but witch hunters as a whole. So witch hunters from some of the other cults, state-sanctioned ones as well, who might be carrying a right to say that basically the person that they're hunting, they can do anything to that person because they're now outlaws or whatever else it might be. Think of, if anyone's seen Django, if you've seen Django, Django Unchained, and there's a bounty hunter in that, and the bounty hunter is carrying certain bounties that allow them to act outside of the law to do things. Witch hunters can act outside of the standard law and take down their targets, assuming that they are in fact what they claim they are, which is where they often go outside of proper judicial practice. Now, the law itself is quite clear as to what you can do. But the law is different in almost every part of the empire because the local lords, the local nobles, whether it's the dukes, the barons, the counts or whatever, often have their own precedents for what law does inside their own counties, their own duchies. And imperial law doesn't matter. So in many places, there's only one person who is allowed to judge anybody at all within one of the provinces of the empire, and that's the local lord. A witch hunter comes in from outside and says, j'accuse, you there are a cultist and I'm bringing you down. The local lord is the one who's meant to say, yes, you can do that. Now, in the Reichland, all of them have got effectively a deal on with the Prince of Reichland and not just the Prince of Reichland, but the Cult of Sigmar and others, saying that witch hunters are allowed to come in and investigate, but they're supposed to inform the local lord that they're doing it. And if they don't, they're acting outside the law. They're doing things they're not meant to do without permission. And they do this a lot because they believe they're right and they don't want to be stopped. And some of them are really quite forthright in their desire to do things without permission. They wander into an area, they think they're right to do a thing. The local lord comes along and says something like, "Why are you doing this?" And they turn around and say, "Why are you trying to stop me?" And there becomes the power, as the people then are in a position where they can support their lord or support the witch hunter, and often they'll go for the one who's burning people. It's an interesting setup, and there is real power dynamics between those who are doing the accusing and the burnings and the general hunting down of witches, and those who actually have the power and the right to let them do it. So yeah, there's quite a lot there that could be fun.
Yeah, there's a really good short story to kind of illustrate this point. I can't remember the name of the short story off my top of my head, but there's a short story about an older witch hunter and a younger witch hunter, and the younger one's kind of being tutored, going through a tutor apprenticeship. That's the word I wanted, with the older one. And the hunt they end up going after, sanctioned by the church, is that they're going after a guy that's claiming to be a witch hunter and is a witch hunter, but he's acting outside of the law. So he's this he's not a con artist. He is a former witch hunter, a formerly sanctioned one, who believes he's in the right. He's super zealous, but he's going around burning villages down. Like, he's just murdering people. And they send witch hunters after him to go kill him because he's just he's completely lost his fucking mind. And B, it's illegal. And when word gets out that this guy's just running around murdering people, it makes people afraid of witch hunters, so they're less likely to get their work done, which the church does not appreciate. Temple does not appreciate. I just did it myself.
Cult.
B, cult. And B, the various lords are fucking furious because they just lost taxes and citizens and like all
I'm going to bring up two comments because I do think they're worthwhile. First is from Jez here, Jez Hunt, just like it's Matthew Hopkins, Witchfinder General, real life. He gave himself that title, broke loads of laws, hanged a lot of people, total get. Yes, and many of the witch hunters that we see on the Sigmarite side are based upon that style of witch hunting, so that's worth keeping things in mind. But this second one as well, which I do think is worth bringing up from Zalmoxis. What do witch hunters do when they think the local lord is a heretic? Different witch hunters take different routes. Legally, they can't do anything other than accuse them and take it to the courts for nobles. This is written directly into Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition. Inside the core book, you'll find that there's a high constable, one of the high lords of Reichland. He's the only one who can sit in judgment over another noble. Now, if a noble is, say for example, his son is doing something, or her son, depending on who the noble is doing something, the only person who can charge that son or daughter is the father. No one else, not even the emperor, can do it. No one can do it. And if another noble house disagrees and says, no, clearly there's something there, they can bring it up to the High Lord Constable. Again, not the Emperor, the High Lord Constable, who's allowed to sit in and have a court about another noble. And do you know what happened? How often that happens? It hasn't for the entire lifetime of the current High Lord Constable, because that's not how it works for nobles. Now, another point that's worth marking for witch hunters and nobility is that nobility's got hierarchy. Effectively, you've got at the very top the elector counts. Under the elector counts, you've got the prime estates. So they're the most important nobles, the biggest duchies, the biggest counties, their biggest dukes, the biggest counts, whatever. And then underneath those, and mostly a feudal structure inside the empire, you've got other noble households. Now, their feudal lord can stand in judgment over them, not a visiting witch hunter. The feudal lord only. So if any of those nobles do anything wrong and a witch hunter kills them, the witch hunter's broken the law and can be hunted down and killed legally. They have to have a dispensation to do a thing, which means they have to go to the local lord who has control over them. Now, these other lords may have further fiefdoms underneath them and further fiefdoms underneath them, because it's a stratified noble situation here. It's like a pyramid of power, and the witch hunter has no control over any of them. But that doesn't mean that a witch hunter can't accuse and can't bring down nobility. They absolutely can. And they often do so by riling up the people. It's a common story. Going into a town, saying that local lord's a problem, riling up the people, particularly if they've already gone to, say, for example, the count, and the local baron's clearly a bad sort, goes to the count and says, this guy needs to be investigated. Can I do it? And the count goes, nah, he's got my support. Fuck off. So he goes to the people and he goes, this guy's bad, and basically riles them up to do the job for him as he's sitting there agitating at the front, and then he walks away whistling. There's lots of different ways these things can be tackled, but do be aware that most of the power when it comes to the nobles lies only with the nobles and no one else. So what do? They think the local lord is a heretic? Sometimes they'll speak to their superiors and say, we're fucked, it's a noble. Sometimes they will speak to the locals and try to rile them up. Sometimes they'll go to a noble that's above them, if there is one, and say, I have concerns. But often they will just close ranks and tell them where to go. It's really hard. And that's why it makes such a great story for Warhammer, because it shouldn't be easy. And it's one of the reasons why chaos has infiltrated so deeply into the nobility. There is more chaos cultists of Slaanesh amongst the nobles than almost any other part of Warhammer society, because they just close ranks, do what they want to do, and there is no way to bring them down legally. So you have to do it illegally. And if you do it illegally, you're the bad guy. And that is what most Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay campaigns are about. Finding out that to do the good thing, you've got to be a bad guy and break the law. And that's fun, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing to try and I think really grind in for everyone today is that witch hunters, this isn't 40K. This isn't where the Imperium, the faith of the God Emperor carries a terrifying amount of power and weight. In fantasy, the cults are much weaker in the Empire than the nobility. You know, it's not even like it is in Bretonia, where like the Fey Enchantress and the lady, they're the ultimate authority, not the nobility. But in the Empire, it's different. And in the Empire, a lot of the witch hunters, if they're doing kind of the things that we all kind of laugh and joke about them doing and think about them doing, they're rebels and they're working illegally, which for Sigmarite witch hunters, they're actually less likely to do, because Sigmarism, the cult of Sigmarism, compels you to obey the law.
Yeah, there's an interesting point here where you've got the difference between a cleric who is blessed by the god and those who are part of the cult. Those who are part of the cult will generally stick with the law, but they will also do what they think is, religiously speaking, correct. And most of the witch hunters are not blessed by Sigmar directly. Some are, but most are not. Meaning that they don't have the restrictions placed upon them that, say, for example, someone who's blessed by Sigmar has. If you are blessed by Sigmar, you are not supposed to break the law of Sigmar. You're just not. But you are supposed to root out a witch wherever it may hide, as in a bad guy witch, or a greenskin, which means you are often put in this horrendous place where you have to break a stricture to stick to your stricture. And that is how it should be. Because Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is not meant to be about having easy choices. It's meant to be about everything's not easy, because the world is difficult and shades of grey are everywhere, and at its heart, chaos is wrong and trying to bring everything down from within. So yeah, it makes for a fun setup for a character. But the vast majority of the witch hunters are not blessed, which means that it's all choice-based. They don't suffer any consequences if they burn an entire village. They don't suffer any consequences if they take out the local noble, but they do potentially from the law. The consequences I was obviously referencing there are from Sigmar himself, where Sigmar just doesn't notice, seems to not care. It's only the blessed servants who will normally be picked out.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to grab some super chats that have come in, and then there's another topic we're going to dive into that's really important. Diamond, are there any stories of Chaos Cultist witch hunters? They do exist. I can't remember any off the top of my head, but there are stories about witch hunters that have fallen into chaos. What happens if witch hunters accuse each other? One of them's going to die. Yeah. Basically, one of them's going to murder the other one. And it's probably going to be ugly, and it's probably going to result in the one that murdered the other one being sanctioned in deep shit. Very deep shit.
it's
Jonathan
not great.
Scott. One thing that always confused me was the witch hunter is that the witch hunters are Templars, but they aren't knights. What's the in-universe explanation for the distinction? Go off, Andy. Andy had to make this work, so he knows.
Right.
That's funny. That's funny.
Right. So they are not Templars. But they 100% are. So what the fuck does that mean? Right. It means that the writer at hand, whose name suddenly escapes me. What's his name again?
Writer of what?
Right, the Witch Hunter. Pardon, wrote the Witch Hunter books.
Oh,
Oh, I can see him now. 'Cause I met him at Games Day and we had a big long chat. It was great. Oh, that's really annoying. Anyway, it doesn't matter what his name is. What you're looking that up, I'll dive in.
C.L. Werner.
He made it. Pardon?
C.L. Werner.
Of course it was C.L. Werner. So anyway,
It's so funny.
so he made the decision to call them that, and he made the decision to use the Order of the Silver Hammer. The Order of the Silver Hammer were not a Templar order; they were a warrior priest order, meaning that he basically took a warrior priest order, he called them Templars, and then just made them into something entirely new. They were witch hunters without armor. They are not classical knights, but they are. And by that I mean this part of the Order of the Silver Hammer, okay, treat them like Templars. They are protectors of the temple. They are protectors of Sigmarite faith. They are protectors of what it is to be a Sigmarite in general. And they are, as far as they're concerned, the true Templars of Sigmar. They are not. I mean, Knights of the Fiery Heart, they're Templars of Sigmar as well. Knights Griffin, they're Templars of Sigmar as well. There's lots of other Templars, but the novels take the route that they're the Templars of Sigmar, which is, I think, a singular direction that is to the detriment of the rest of the other Templar orders that are out there. But in terms of who they are, whilst they might not get up in knights, they are in armor. They are going to war often. They are Knights of Sigmar.
A lot of witch hunters actually wear a surprising amount of hefty armor.
Yeah, quite.
Under that big old coat of theirs.
And they work from the precept houses, from the temples. They work, they're mounted, they work as mounted warriors of Sigmar in the same way that many of the other Templars do as well. And they have dispensation from the Grand Theogonists to refer to themselves as this small sect within the Order, pardon me, of the Silver Hammer, as it's the Templar Order wing of the warrior priests that are the Order of the Silver Hammer. It's a complicated setup, but it's largely because the author chose to call them that, and we were left justifying it.
Cole Patterson. Is the confusion between the position and powers of witch hunters and the Inquisition of 40k a common mistake among some writers?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say it is.
Yeah.
I would say there's a conflation of Warhammer Fantasy Witch Hunters with the Inquisition of 40k, and there's also a conflation with real world hist mythology, so like mythical history of the like the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, particularly when much of what the witch hunters potentially could be with the cult of Sigmar, for example, is also taken up by the cult of the cleansing flame, which are the true inquisitors. But the inquisitors are often the witch hunters that are witch hunting the witch hunters, so to speak. So if there's another witch, the witch hunter falls, it's not so much that the two of them will get on each other's nose. The cleansing flame are the ones that come in to burn out the problem. And you don't want those guys in, so often they're not going to be accusing anyone of anything, purely to keep the knights at their cleansing flame inquisitors.
Yeah, the cleansing flame suck. We'll talk about them more.
They're literally the worst. But it is worth, again, saying one more time that the reason that the conflation here, I think, is true is because, and it goes both ways, the focus on Sigmar for the witch hunters comes often from the 40k view of how the witch hunters work as well, where they're all for the Emperor per se, where in truth witch hunters in the Empire have almost nothing to do with Sigmar. Only one group do, and they're a tiny group in comparison to the enormous number of witch hunters that there are in the Empire. Most of the cults have got their own witch hunters, all of the states of the old world, and we're talking the Grand Provinces, so that's Middenland, Reichland, Stirland. They've all got their own state-sanctioned witch hunters who have nothing to do with any of the cults. They're bounty hunters who chase bounties, often which are chasing witches, vampires, various other things. They get given the right to chase these individuals down because they are sanctioned bounty hunters by the state to go hunt them down, and they have unique skills that they can bring to the picture because they've either hunted witches in the past, perhaps they've got some advantage or benefit that others don't, and they're far more common than seeing yourself this wide brim hat arrival with a twin-tailed comet upon his brood. They are the rarest of witch hunters in the Empire. The vast majority of them are not that.
Yeah. Now so this is a good segue to talk about that there is within the setting, witch hunters do exercise a lot of the claimed authority that you see in a lot of like the novels and the video games and stuff. And I want to talk a little bit about that. And there's a really good, easy real world example, which is a little somber in today's day and age. But when you think of like the police, right, especially if you're American, there is a very common note that the cops can lie to you, and they will lie to you. And they will do things like try to lie or intimidate you into forgetting what your rights are in order to get you to confess or to say something that you shouldn't have said that they can then use against you, even though that it may not be entirely true. And one of the things with witch hunters is that they wield two really big advantages within the setting when they're dealing with especially normal people, which is that a lot of the people in the Empire do not understand how the laws work, because the law in the Empire is really fucking messy and it changes depending on where you are, and it's constantly changing on a regular basis because nobles and burgermeisters are constantly trying to fuck with things so they can get around things, and the emperor is always trying to like lay laws down on them so he can tax them more efficiently, and they're trying to go around it, so everything's like a mess. And think about how well educated our world is and how most of the laws that would affect whether or not you go to prison tend not to change very quickly in our world, and yet how many people in our world have no idea what their rights are. And if a cop walks up and just bullshits a law, most people are just going to believe them. In the Warhammer world, if a guy that looks like a witch hunter walks into a village and starts saying and declaring things, the vast majority of people are going to believe him. And he has the second advantage, which is that a lot of people don't like trying to go up against witch hunters because, first of all, they are very, we'll say they're very fond of using violence and gangs to get their point across. Most witch hunters don't travel alone. A lot of the bounty hunter-like ones, which are the most of them, the secular ones, they travel with a gang. They have like a bunch of rakes, a bunch of dudes that are armed, very dangerous, used to fighting and getting their way with bullying people that follow them around, because they try to intimidate people. They try and scare people into not challenging their authority because a lot of their authority is bullshit. And so they rely on scaring you into not trying to push back against them. And if you do push back, they will often either rough you up or kill someone, also in the hopes of suppressing dissent. The other aspect of that is many people in the Empire believe a lot of the myths, kind of ironically, that people who hear about witch hunters or like read about them on the wikis or play the video games also believe about them, which is that some people think they do have ultimate authority, or they do believe that you should never go against a witch hunter because if he ends up finding a source of corruption and you got in his way, he might be able to turn around and say, oh, well, you were making this investigation harder, so clearly you're in league with them, so you're also a heretic. Or, oh, your family member was a heretic? Well, that means you're a heretic by association. Like, there's all these levels of it that in many cases aren't actually true, but people are too scared, rightfully so, to challenge these very armed, dangerous, sometimes zealous, not necessarily in a religious sense, but zealous in a sense that they believe they're right. And I mean, especially think about nowadays, think about how scary a armed person is who is not afraid of fighting or killing someone, who deep down believes they cannot make mistakes. Think how scary that kind of person is.
Yeah, and particularly when you're dealing with, say, for example, your Templar Witch Hunters, your Order of the Silver Flame types. They came from, they've been running for a long time. And when we go back to, say, for example, the time that the old world represents, which is before the rebinding together of the Empire under Magnus the Pious, Witch Hunters during this era arguably have much more real power, much more, because there's much less control over what laws are. And the individual right of the Sigmarites suddenly becomes much more powerful. Witches are illegal everywhere. There is no form of legal witchery, meaning that the Templars are in a very strong position to burn whomever the fuck they want. And who can stop them? It's a very different setup, but the Witch Hunters, the Templar ones in particular, were massively curtailed when Magnus the Pious came to power. When he came to power in his reformations, he bound the witch hunters back up inside imperial law, but he also gave them the right to do their job inside imperial law. But by doing so, he brought them into the structure and explained how they could work. And this is something that's often forgotten by writers who just go, well, the witch hunter's position in this society is to do whatever is needed to root out chaos. No, that's what they believe their position is. But it's not what their position is. Their position is to work within the framework of the local laws. And it is the local laws because the Empire doesn't have a universal legal system. It's got laws that work over all of the Empire, but they don't apply to the normal peasants like at all. This is stuff about calling troops, how coinage is made, all that sort of stuff. That's nothing to do with what witch hunters do. Coming into a town and dealing with any particular chaos taint that may be there that the witch hunter may be having to deal with, the vast majority of that's going to involve local laws, which means that the witch hunter has to deal within the local legal framework. And often that local legal framework is just made up by the local noble. It's not a handy group of laws that you can just happily pop along. It basically made up, which means that his best route towards getting what he wants is to go to local noble and say, I believe this is currently happening. We need to scour this particular area of the infestation that I see. And the local noble often will just go, yes, filthy peasants, go do it. That is the law that they work within. It's made up by powerful individuals. Take, for example, real-world countries, which have massive laws. Does that ever stop the rich and the powerful from not doing the things they want to do? No, it doesn't. It just doesn't. And that's in a world where law is codified and we understand it and we have very clear courts. Think about their courts where most of their courts don't have judges appointed by local nobles. It's just the noble deciding what happens in their land. That's it. Nothing more. And that's what the witch hunter has to deal with. But there are certain things that are universal across the Empire. For example, if someone is declared by the courts to be a witch and now outlawed, they can have a bounty issued upon them, which means no matter where they hide in the Empire, if you carry the correct papers, they're supposed to let you go through. And if you go to the local noble and say, this person can be taken down, they are not supposed to stop you. Supposed to. But some nobles don't like their power being challenged. Some nobles can't stand that. So when a witch hunter comes in, legally allowed to take out a witch, and they kill it, the local noble finds out. Sometimes they drag him up and say, what have you done? Nah, murder, dead. Because such is the way of the Empire. The power is what matters, less than the word of the law in many, many parts of it. And often the word of the law is nothing more than the local noble at hand. And while there might be the equivalent of federal laws, so to speak, as in laws that apply across the Empire, as in this person has been outlawed and can be hunted anywhere in the Empire by imperial decree, the reality of that in the ground is often completely different to what it should be. So whilst the Templars of Sigmar were once basically rogue, they could do whatever they wanted to do. They got massively curtailed by Magnus the Pious, and Magnus the Pious brought them into the system. No longer standing apart from the system, they're now sitting within the system. But even inside the system, they are pretty much at the whims of all of the nobles. Fortunately, that's often to their benefit, though, because they can just waltz up to a noble and say, you don't mind if I do this? And the majority will say, well, of course not. Root out the heretics. Because the cult of Sigmar supports the nobles. They do. and so do the Templars, because Sigmar was a noble and he established the noble system. It's his fault that all of this is the case. It's his fault that you have to go to the noble. So many of the Sigmarites are like, oh, well, of course I'd go to them. Because, you know, that's what Sigmar set up. This is Sigmar's representative in this area. Effectively, it's like a little Sigmar. I'm going up to little Sigmar. When little Sigmar says no, that's when they have problems. But it's relatively rare that they say no, because witch hunters, at most, they'll kill like 4 or 5 people and move on. And your average noble, unless they're particularly caring or particularly selfish or particularly something, will just go, yeah, sure, go do your job. Because they don't really care that much. They've got their own shit to deal with, often the next party. That's what they're really worrying about. Their next trip over to Altdorf, their next trip down to Black Powder Week in Nuln, and how they're going to swig the best wine they've ever had. They don't care about Bob and Bella, the noble, that they might come up to, not the noble, pardon me, the peasant, who might be burned by some witch. If they hear that a witch hunter's killed someone in their towns, they're like, yeah, well, they deserved it then, didn't they? It would have been burnt otherwise. So there is a lot of potential tension, but very rarely in practice is there actual tension.
Yeah, and oftentimes they're called into situations where it's kind of depending on the witch hunter, when you're dealing with most witch hunters who are more like bullies, it could be very tragic when witch hunters are called in, and they make for excellent villains because of this, because they're very unsympathetic men and women, generally speaking. And when they show up, because they could get called, a lot of times they'll get called in for things that when you think about it, you go, maybe a witch hunter wouldn't be the best choice. Like there's a plague. Well, a witch hunter might be called in because clearly the plague is, the noble will say, oh, all my people are getting sick. I don't want to get sick. Call the witch hunter to burn out whatever the hell's causing the sickness. Or, there's rumors that there's someone harboring a mutant. Oh, I don't want a disgusting mutant in my town. And what if it causes more mutations? Call the witch hunters in. And you often have the witch hunters are used as a cudgel to beat certain things into, or even if there's like a group of people that are acting in the best interest of like the peasantry, and the noble does not like that, it is not unusual at all for a witch hunter to be called in. The noble will tell them, oh, there's corruption in that village. I need you to do whatever it takes to root it out. And the witch hunter will go, okay, and will look for signs of corruption when there probably aren't any. And this is when you get those stories of witch hunters killing a lot of innocent people, and the witch hunter saying, well, if they're innocent, then I've just sent them into Sigmar's graces, so they should thank me. And these are stories that usually like the establishment being wielded against common people, and really, 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 really sad stories.
Yeah, totally. But again, the focus that we have on the fiction is almost always the Sigmarites, but they are just one small part of a bigger whole. And if I was to drive that particular nail down deeper, well, I would be happier, because it really needs to be pushed into place. There are witch hunters of Mor. There are witch hunters of Verena. There are witch hunters of Ulrich, even. All of the cults have got their own people who are out hunting those that they think need to be hunted. And generally speaking, witch is not just someone who's using magic, but it's anyone that has invited the ruinous powers into place, i.e. heretics. You're hunting down anyone that's bringing about chaos in a local area. And that often conflates to mean things like mutants, because mutants are often associated with chaos, or alternatively necromancy, because necromancy is witchery. So thus, that's bad, and it invites people doing things that are against imperial law, which ultimately leads to chaos. Everything, as far as a lot of these people are concerned, leads to chaos. But don't get away from the fact that the majority of witch hunting isn't arriving in a village and investigating. I mean, that makes for a fun story. But that's not the majority. The majority is a witch being declared outlaw and being hunted. A proper witch hunt. Where they try to find the individual. And Witcher style, they take on a contract and they hunt that one down and they bring it in. And that has nothing to do with Templars of Sigmar, although a Templar of Sigmar may chase that witch. It has nothing to do with Templars of any order or witch hunters from any one of the cults. That's to do with people doing their job within the individual duchy, within the individual grand county, whatever it might be. There are people who will be chasing down these individuals and who get good at it, who get used to understanding not just how to pursue a witch or an individual of that type, but also how to capture them, which isn't that easy because often there's rewards for capturing them, not just killing them. So there's a whole extra bunch of stories that can be told with witch hunters. It's not just, I've arrived in town, I'm a witch hunter, I'm now going to try and find corruption. That's really not what they do at all under most circumstances. They're almost always pursuing something that's already known. They're not chasing down stuff that's unknown because there is so much of it in the Empire, particularly as you move towards the end times, that you're never really in a position where you have the leisure of just doing the unknown thing. The ones who are doing the unknown thing are generally bad guys at heart. They're the ones who are just seeking it because they like torture, because they like finding these things, that they like breaking communities. They like to hear people cry. They're not good guys. They're bad guys mostly, who are inviting the chaos gods into the hearts of other people by their very existence, because they accuse people who should not be accused, and thus those people feel injustice and they want to change society, and that brings about Tzeentch worship again and again and again. Witch hunters of that type who are going from place to place just hunting are often some of the biggest recruiters of real heresy, because of their very existence. Meaning that, yes, if you're out there thinking about what can I do for a fun game, witch hunters make some of the best chaos cultists because they breed chaos. They don't just hunt down chaos, they breed it. They often make some of the best accidental chaos cultists, the ones who are basically doing chaos's work while they think they're doing their god's good work because they are hunting down things. They are finding them, but they're often finding perceived slights, killing people who do not need to be killed, hunting people who do not need to be hunted. So, but they make for great stories. So yeah, use them.
Yeah, and to be clear, there are a lot of good witch hunters. There are a lot of witch hunters that are like amazing at their job, and when you have good witch hunters, they tend to be like I said, they're almost always pursuing a contract they have been given. So like you have like one of the whatever faith they're a part of, like there's a particular high-ranking member of the cult who's like, hey, we need you to go and deal with this thing, or like there's this person you need to track down and deal with who's causing all these problems, or there's a noble that hires them to root out a particular issue, and they will fulfill their contracts. But when you have good witch hunters, which are featured in some stories, they are usually quite careful to only do what they need to do, and try not to hurt people that don't need to be hurt because they don't want to cause future problems. But you also have quite a few good instances of witch hunters doing a job that doesn't even end up killing, and that witch hunters, many of them, interestingly enough, are surprisingly good when they're like actual good people, of finding people who are expressing their magical talents for the first time, who are discovering that they use magic, and being able to track those people down and say, okay, like you have to come with me to the colleges. I've got to take you to the colleges. Yep. Because a lot of people think that they'll track them down and kill them. No, they escort those people safely to the colleges of magic because that's their job.
Yeah, the job, as stated all the way back at first edition, was to prevent and hunt chaos, not kill witches, not kill people who can do magic shit. That's not their job. Their job is to prevent corruption in the Empire. Almost every example of witch hunting, whether it is secular, whether it's based in one of the cults, its core value is stopping corruption. Corruption comes in many forms, but someone accidentally using magic in a weird way because they have the magic talent is not that. And it takes someone who's particularly hardline, and I would argue a bad witch hunter, to be the one who would be killing those. That's not their job. Their job is to hunt down corruption. And we should probably grab a bunch of super chats before we move to our next bit.
Sinchmeister, Witch Hunter, that one over there in the hat. Scott Amara, thank you very much for helping me run my Wolfrock campaign. Well, hopefully this information is helpful. I mean, the Witch Hunter is a very, very popular thing. I'm playing a Witch Hunter in my campaign, but I decided to go a very zealous Order of the Cleansing Flame character. But that has been fun for me because I tend to much prefer playing very diplomatic characters. And it's fun playing a hardline character. Like, did it with my my fellow players' consent, and I also am very careful to make sure my character does not get in the way of people pursuing their own stories and such. Like, he grumbles and complains about a lot of things, and he has threatened violence on several occasions, but ultimately he's there to forward the plot and what the party's up to, not to be a... But he also, the fun thing about witch hunters is making sure that you show that they are very obsessive. So there are things they care about, and there are things they don't. Like, you know, the fact that there are people in my party that constantly steal things, I don't give a shit. That's not chaos. I don't care. I don't give a damn.
Sure.
That's not my remit, not my problem.
Yeah. Skylar, I mean, for me, witch hunters are one of the core characters for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. They just are. And we included one of them inside the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay starter set because it was important to do so. And we also added a little bit of extra detail for the push and pull that particular character was feeling in the relationships that they had, the devout nature of their position balanced off against their own personal character, their own hopes and their own dreams. They make great Warhammer characters, and they've been a core component of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay since the very first edition. Witch Hunter, because it was one of the top tier careers, was often one of the careers that people landed or were aiming for, then landed on, super happy that they finally got there, and then stayed in for some time because it was a bigger career, meaning that for those who are playing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay a lot at the beginning, Assassin, Witch Hunter, a few of the other top tier ones, they were in almost every party. Meaning that most parties had a witch hunter. And there wasn't that many top tier careers, you see. So a lot of them had one. And a lot of people's core experience with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay in those earlier editions was having a witch hunter in the party. Meaning that when the second edition came along, it had to be included again. The third edition, exactly the same again. And then when we hit the fourth edition, exactly the same again. Except by the time we hit the fourth edition, Witch Hunter had moved far beyond its initial remit, which was just a Hunter of Chaos. It was now also a Templar of Sigmar, an Order militant, a Templar rather than just a Witch Hunter. An Order militant of Sigmar itself, often just called the Order of Sigmar, for goodness sake. Many saw them almost as a living embodiment of what Sigmarism was. So that sort of had to be included, but the older form of the Bounty Hunter also had to all be included there as well. So all forms of Witch Hunters could express inside the fourth edition of the rules.
Yeah, for a notable thing, going back to Saltspire for just a second, it's not just a, oh, what a coinkydink that Saltspire got the alternate careers that he gets, where Saltspire is a witch hunter, a bounty hunter, or a zealot, where the witch hunter represents like his core identity, but the bounty hunter is a what if he went secular and kind of lost his faith path, and the zealot is what if he went too deep into his faith path. But those are not coincidences. those are showing you how closely the witch hunter and the bounty hunter are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hammond, good witch hunters, yet Ted Cruz is still loose. I know, tell me about it. I can't believe the Zodiac Killer is still out there. Leon Grotsky, wanted to say thanks. Previously on a Q&A, I asked a question writing a Bruner-themed bounty hunter campaign. This stream has already many additional useful bits.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Leon. I find that almost everybody that I've encountered at conventions when we've been discussing Warhammer Fantasy characters, for example, and they bring up Witch Hunter, tend to fall back on now the Templars of Sigmar. Because so many of them have been wrapped up in either the novels or perhaps the computer game, or alternatively, going right back to Warhammer Quest, that idea of our Pilgrim-esque Matthias Witch Hunter type that you got from that version. And very few have gone beyond that. And it's really good, I think, for us to have a moment to just discuss over that witch hunters are so much more than that in Warhammer. And that if you're out there thinking about maybe making a character for one of your games, then consider the other cults. Everything can do it. If you might think, well, you could have a witch hunter of, say, let's choose one of the less obvious ones. Let's say, no, I can do Shally easy. Let's go Ronald. Okay, the Ronald got the crooked fingers who are always trying to bring people down who are in authority of doing things wrong. And when there's witches who are doing things wrong within society, yeah, they're going to have witch hunters within the crooked finger part of their orders. So yes, a witch hunter of Renald absolutely fits. Okay, bring them down, show them for what they truly are. But your angle might be different. You're not looking there to kill them. You're looking to take them down several pegs. And often you might be looking to take down the witch hunters also, who are doing things that you consider to be utterly unconscionable and unacceptable. So it's much more complicated than just simply our, classic witch hunter, a witch finder general type. We have all different sorts of cults, but we also have just people who are on the more bounty hunter side. And again, Django Unchained is a good place to have a look at a bit of bounty hunting if you want to see an example of that, and now apply that to witches and vampires and necromancers and all that. Not necessarily half orcs like first edition suggests, but all the rest of it works really well.
How much was Solomon Kane an influence on the concept of witch hunters from the
pretty strong. The boat person, pretty strong. Solomon Kane, which has a really good set of miniatures for its board game, by the way. I own a bunch of them. Solomon Kane is strongly there, and if you've got any Solomon Kane miniatures, they match Warhammer really well, and there's a reason for that. It's because they are quite strongly influential for many of the writers. So that's a really good one to call out, the boat person.
Yeah, so one of the things I kind of want to talk about witch hunters as well is one of the things that's interesting about witch hunters, you'll notice this if you pull up Wolfrep, is that there is a grim resolve and willingness to do things that a normal person cannot or will not do that really helps define a lot of witch hunters. That when you pick up a witch hunter, one of the first skills you get in your tier 1 is torture. Like you learn and are good at torturing people to get them to say what you want them to say. Because one of the important things about torture that pop culture gets wrong very heavily, that we have reiterated forever, is that torturing is not a good way to get the truth out of people. What it is it's fantastic for getting people to tell you what they think you want them to say so that the torture stops. And witch hunters rely on that. Many of them.
Yeah.
Which sucks. Like they're very much, a lot of witch hunters, especially when they're doing those paid jobs, which most of them are doing bounty type jobs. It is not unusual, unfortunately, to come across a witch hunter that is more interested in finding a culprit that fits the bill so they get paid rather than the culprit that the bill is actually for. One of the easiest ways for chaos cultists and such and witches to escape witch hunters is to basically create a trail that leads to somebody innocent. And that person gets tortured until they confess. And then once they've confessed, the witch hunter says, I got a confession, clears it with the noble or the magistrate. They say, yep, burn that man alive at the stake. And they do. And it's a big public display. And they say, yep, we burned him alive. I get paid. I've cleared the corruption. Hooray! And everybody leaves. Meanwhile, the witch escapes.
I think that there is definitely a storyline you should consider there if you're thinking about how to use witch hunters in your own games or your own headcanons. And that's that if you pay someone to find someone or something, they'll find it because there's money on the line. And the more desperate or horrible or particularly mean this individual is, the more likely it is that they will find more of it, which is a danger. So if you, for example, say there is a bounty out there for all proven witches, they're going to find witches. And as noted, torture is a very good way of finding people who will claim that they are witches because they were tortured and they just want it to stop. Torture is not, under most circumstances, almost all, a good way of finding out anything other than, well, whatever it is that you want them to say. That's about it. It takes someone of extraordinary will to get around that, or extraordinary will to not do anything other than what the torturer asks. So, yeah, torture, a core component of many witch hunters, but not the only tools. I mean, if you take, for example, again, just to fall back on it, go check Django Unchained. It's a movie that if you haven't watched, there's quite a lot of pretty good stuff in there. And it's rare to find a movie that focuses on things like bounty hunting. So I particularly appreciate it for what it offers there. And he's not torturing anyone. He's not doing any of the normal standard witch huntery stuff that we normally expect. What's he doing? He's got a name and a person that they're hunting down. So they hunt them down and they capture them. And that is what the majority of witch hunting is. There's a couple of examples of this inside Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. If you take, for example, the adventure Baitin Witch. Baitin Witch is a super short adventure that was created for the Uber's Right Chronicles right at the very beginning by Dara. And Dara and I put together a very simple little story. And the story there was very clear. There was a witch hunter chasing witches who was chasing legal people. And the story is you find out they're doing that. What do? Do you stop the witch hunter? Do you not stop the witch hunter? Do you let them do whatever you want to do? And the whole premise of the original design around that was it was all wanted posters. Originally, there was going to be 6 wanted posters in that, including one which was a cat that was wanted, but less said about that, the better. It was a good story, though. These wanted posters are posted up, and people will chase these bills because these people are wanted and normal law no longer applies to them. And different people will be chasing this. Some of them will be professional hunters of bounty who are just looking for the money. That's it. They don't have any particular care one way or the other for anything other than this is how they make their money. Others are sadistic and they're looking for an excuse where they can legally kill people, which they can because they're now outlaws. So some of them are proper psychopaths, and there is a legal route to allowing their psychopathy to manifest. They can legally kill people because they're now outlawed. They are chasing particular bounties for this, and witches are particularly difficult to kill. And people who are psychopaths sometimes like the challenge. They think they're cleverer than others. They think they are more capable, and they will go out of their way to chase that sort of person. Makes for an interesting character concept at the very least. But when there's these bills of various people you can hunt, including the nasty guy who's living out in a cave somewhere, who's apparently a witch, people are going to be chasing them. These are your witch hunters. As much as your crazy Sigmarite who's bellowing prayers of Sigmar and bringing down holy fire and holding up an amulet that holds off against the corruption of this necromancy or the ability of this particular vampire to affect them as they hold up this holy amulet. A very Warhammer questy view of what witch hunters can be. But the day-to-day witch hunters are generally just common folk looking for money. And they have to be often registered locally. They have to be an actual bounty hunter to register for certain bounties. The only place to get them is to go into the actual halls where the bounties are. So it means you have to be a registered part of the local guilds that do this. But some of them are just open bills, particularly in some places where it's just a whole host of wanted stuff. And some of them lie outside the law. Yeah, I'm going to pay, I don't know, 12 crowns if this person is captured. Is that legal? Nope. They're just posting a bounty and they will pay. Now, will it involve anything legal? No. And that's when you can end up having witch hunters chasing very legal people because people are illegally wanting things out of them. Say, for example, a local noble gets spurned by the local gold wizard who was being called by the elector count and the noble wants him to do stuff. Local noble goes, yeah, hunt him down. Is that legal? No. But you end up with a very legal wizard being hunted down by witch hunters because they're just after the money. And it makes for some interesting moral questions if you're in a position where you want to play a witch hunter and then you're being asked to hunt down a witch who's done nothing wrong other than just piss off the local noble. Do you do it? Do you not do it? It's entirely up to you. Yeah, there's some fun bits there.
Yeah. One of the things, delving into like witch hunter, like kind of the more what you would expect to see with them. One of the things that's really fun about witch hunters when you're engaging with them in the setting is that they are kind of the closest thing that you'll typically find to something like a witcher, in the sense that these guys, when you're dealing with like a good one, are armed with so many goofy ass fucking things in their pockets. It is silly. Like they're practically walking pharmacies of goofiness of that. They've got like, you're gonna have them with their holy water, their silver bullets, their stakes, their
silver swords.
Yeah, silver swords, usually like a silver sword, a steel sword, different kinds of bullets, a rack of pistols across their chest with and the strap. Many of them wear lead-lined coats because they know lead can deaden magic. They will have little candles on their hats because their hats are stiff enough that they can have candles up there that they light, which provides them with some vision in low light scenarios. They will often have different kinds of plants, things like your wolf's bane, your demon's bane, like all these different things that are believed to. The funny thing is that they walk a really fine line between carrying weird superstitious shit and shit that actually works. And it is not unusual to meet a witch hunter who will have like a bunch of talismans, some of which are actually just mundane, but they might do something, so might as well have them. Kind of like, Benny from The Mummy, where he keeps like holding up the different things to like, they're kind of like that, where they will be decked out with more stuff than you can shake a stick at just in case it works. Because at the end of the day, they're normal human beings. They don't have magic. They don't have blessings. They don't have the gods aren't manifesting miracles through them. They're just normal fucking dudes going up against shit like vampires. And vampires are way scarier than any human on Earth has any right to be.
True fact.
It's chaos sorcerers and such. And sometimes witch hunters will win because they go in, they're more like the good ones. Once again, reiterating, the good ones. They're more like hardcore investigators. It's more about setting up a trap, trying to get your opponent when they're asleep or they're distracted or there's something else going on. They're much more skulky types, and more kind of, when they're played well, investigators that specialize in assassinations through trying to find the weakness of their opponent and then throwing every goddamn thing at the wall, because they know if they don't get that kill shot in the first opening salvo of the battle, they're probably going to die.
Now, if you go back to the original version of the witch hunters that were presented inside Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, they were basically that. They were just random dudes who were anti-chaos, and they were veterans, so they were good at it. If we take a look at how this gets picked up and run with in Warhammer Quest, they add some extra rules to it to try and ensure that our witch hunters have got extra capabilities to cope with the horrors that they face. They added 2 or 3 core component rules. The first was their amulets, all the various things that they could Benny-wise bring to the table. And they were genuinely really quite good. Things like amulets of fire that shot off some literal holy fire. Amulet of Alcadazar, as I recall, as well, which might give a little bit of a surprise to those of you who know your wider Warhammer lore. What the hell does Alcadazar have to do with this? But the Amulet of Alcadazar was there inside his arsenal, along with a variety of other amulets that could do things like hold off magic spells, provide extra strength, an amulet of strength, an amulet of fury, providing extra attacks, that sort of stuff. They had amulets that gave them benefits. They also had faith, their ability to see things through, because they were very much the Sigmarite angle. And their faith basically was just additional benefits on top of your rolls. You do a roll and you'd say, I'll spend a faith point and get a bonus on that roll. So you got yourself extra bonuses. On top of that, your pistols, bang, 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 your silver weapon, and you're away. If we move over to what they then became later, they're pistol-wielding characters who follow the template of what Warhammer Quest offered. So they get rid of most of the amulet stuff and they just go, they're holy warriors with faith who can do extra holy warrior faith stuff. And they run with that for a bit. That's 8th edition. And you move over to, say, Matthias Stallman's novels, where they sort of spread that out much further. And a lot of them are just normal dudes doing their very best with the training that they have to hunt down witches. The Witch Hunter's Handbook is a really good one. Was that Darius Sinks? I think it was.
Yes.
Was it?
The Witch Hunter's Handbook is so funny.
It's a great book.
Such a funny book.
Really worth going through if you want to get a good idea of what it's like to be one of the Templars of Sigmar, and all of their various discussions in there about how to tell what a witch is, what sort of equipment you should be carrying, what the order is like, the various ranks of the order. The fact that it's worth noting it is a militant order, which means it is a military order. They're Templars. They're not just priests or some equivalent. They are Templars, a militant order. And exactly that means that they also go to war, which supports what they are over in Warhammer Fantasy Battle as well. But as we said, that they are just one small part of a far bigger whole. The actual career, if we go into Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, is a far broader career that's all about just tracking down hunting, finding, and often killing witches or their equivalent, be it vampires or necromancers, whatever else it might be. But they are not just the Sigmar ones, which means they don't have faith written into the character sheet. If you want to have the ones that also have faith, you then move over in towards, say, monk or priest or some equivalent, and you get all the divine extras on top of that as well. But is this somewhere that an extra career should be added? Yeah, almost certainly. But hey, as we said right at the beginning of the stream, we're heading into a 5th edition now, so there's no longer a big open gap waiting to be plugged there. Instead, it's make it yourself at home if you want to continue playing with the current edition.
Yep. One of the things that's also kind of fun about the only to my knowledge, tabletop edition, at least of what we consider modern Warhammer that had the playable Witch Hunter 8th edition, is that the rules, I think, were actually really well written, of that it could very well be a, not the lore tidbit that's before the rules, but the rules themselves are very well written, of that it could be just a secular part of any order.
It could be.
Where it's like, they have magic resistance too, because of all of their little talismans and stuff. They have accusation, where they're just like, that guy is a heretic and I need to kill that guy. And that rule was fantastic, because it didn't have to be against like a chaos baddie. It's just, that's the guy I'm here to kill. And you got you got reroll all to hit rolls against whoever that is. And you got the sniper rule with your pistols against them with the rerolls.
Fucking brilliant, by the way.
Yeah. You got Grim Resolve, which is awesome, which is that witch hunters automatically pass fear checks, and they count terror as causing fear. Awesome. Great. Cool. Because they're used to it. They're used to facing a lot of these things, and they're horribly broken men, but they know how to do their job. And then Tools of Judgment, which is just that when they go up against wizards, undead, or demons, or they, in close combat, they get to reroll their wound rolls because they have silver weapons and the stakes. Like, they have weapons designed to kill these things. And that's it. Like, it's a very nice, competent, lore-accurate rule set that's also really good.
Yeah, it is. I almost regretted that the description for it was so Sigmar facing.
Yeah.
Was so standard Witch Hunter, because the actual rules for them are Witch Hunters, as we understand Witch Hunters. It did, however, make it super easy when we were putting the careers together for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4 to create a Witch Hunter that was all of those things, because it was kind of supported by the rules themselves. So yeah, it was good. I do love me Witch Hunters. I had many of them in me parties down through the years, and it's really nice to be able to reflect that with the careers.
Super Orlok, I feel like many people take the very modern idea of the police into medieval settings, much to my chagrin as someone who likes world building. I agree.
I strongly agree, Super Orlok. The concept of the modern police doesn't exist in most medieval and even Renaissance settings. Modern police and policing is something that's largely an artifact of the 18th century, and didn't exist before that. Law was not as we understand it in the way we do today. I built a couple of extra career bits and bobs to try and support that for my games. The idea of what the watch is very different in my games than it is for most other games that are out there. But how you want to do it ultimately is what works. I will say one thing though, that often when we're playing our fantasy games, who really cares what a modern idea is used or isn't used? It's all about having fun at your own table. And if you want to have yourself a watch that is much like the modern police, then absolutely do that. Particularly if you take a look at, say, for example, they had Dickon of Dock Street that sits over in, say, for example, Altdorf. The Altdorf watch are presented almost like a classic guards, Terry Pratchett style watch, based upon more Victorian style policing in London than you would expect in anything even close to the correct time period for Altdorf. But that's because it was drawing upon those classical literatures and TV shows from the 50s and the 60s, which were often reflecting back to what the cops and the police were like then. So they just ported those over into their very first Warhammer novels, and it sort of stuck. So it's no great surprise that that sort of police has been copy pasted over, but it doesn't make a great deal of sense. In later editions, you tend to find that the idea of the watch has been eroded quite a bit, and instead has been replaced with the idea that the state army fulfills most of the watch's role, and it's only a couple of the big cities that have got their own actual watch. The rest of it's just soldiers that are employed by the local nobles permanently to patrol and do stuff. And when the soldiers arrive, just don't get in the wrong side of them, because the law is whatever the hell they say it is. And it has very little to do at all with the actual law. So the local soldiers come in and everyone just like, yeah, it's time to go. It's a very different idea to how the police work.
And I will say I think this is really common as well for people from America that are getting into like fantasy roleplay, because we don't have a historical context of there's something really being anything before the police. Like the way our history is often taught, they've kind of just always been there, because when America was like around being founded, they were more like slave catchers, and that they enforced certain laws that were really awful. But like for us, the idea of like the medieval equivalent, which is not at all like the police, for us, for a lot of Americans, is just an idea that they don't understand and won't get unless they spread out their learning culturally. Which is why I encourage my fellow Americans to learn history from other nations, because it will really help with your world building. Cole Patterson, but are any on par with Obi-Wan Sherlock Classon?
No.
He's the greatest ever. Yeah, the Pinkertons. Yeah, Pinkertons were probably the American equivalent of the average witch hunter.
And they're still going today, being extremely upstanding.
I will always be deeply amused and sad that Wizards of the Coast hired the Pinkertons.
Yep, me too.
Ro, say you were Karl Franz's national security advisors. How would you suggest the various witch hunting organizations and systems should be reformed to actually improve the world's chances of survival against chaos, I presume you mean?
They shouldn't be. There are more than enough who have the correct moral core or religious core, or indeed just standing to do the job at hand. The problem isn't the witch hunters. The problem is individuals who break the laws, who just do their own thing regardless. And the problem is the fact that the Empire isn't what everyone believes it is. The Empire is a bunch of disparate states that do whatever they want. Even Reichland. Reichland is, 60, 70 prime estates, all of which are broken up into a bunch of smaller fiefs. And each one of these prime estates have their own laws. The Emperor doesn't rule any of them. The Prince of Altdorf, the Prince of Reichland, doesn't rule Reichland. The prime estates do. The Prince of Reichland sits above them all and receives taxes for the state army and a bunch of other things, but he doesn't actually rule them. Which means if you want anything done, and say, for example, I don't know, if you want to go down to Bergenhafen, okay, if you want to go down to the Duchy of Saponatime, if you're down in the Duchy of Saponatime, you need to have the local burghers on side, or alternatively, have the local duke, the Duke von Saponatime, on your side. If you don't, then you're getting nowhere. So the witch hunters have to work with them, and if the duke's not supporting them, or the duke has an issue, then everything begins to collapse. Which is why there is federalized style laws, as in there's some laws that stand at the very top that are over all the empire, but most of those were put in place during Magnus's time, when no one could say no to Magnus. The emperor tries to do that today. All of the electrocrats just say, nah, I don't want you curtailing my authority. I don't want you curtailing my control. And if you go to any of the individual grand provinces, all of their nobles say to the elector count, nah, I don't want you curtailing my control. I don't want you curtailing my authority. So in many respects, the problem here isn't the witch hunting organizations and systems. Well, to a degree, possibly the systems, but it's not the systems of the witch hunters. It's the system of the empire itself that's at fault. But even then, because it's hard to change, the even bigger problem is that almost all of the systems are riddled through with those who would undermine and support change because of cultists. There is no easy way to fix this. It's a massive, huge, red tape filled bureaucracy, all of which have got individual power players pulling in different directions, and at least 10% of them are people in a position who absolutely do not want anybody else changing things as they stand, because it's how they hold their power, meaning that actually making change is near to impossible.
Jesus fuck, Andy. Does Karl control anything at all?
No. I mean, the whole point of the Emperor is that they have almost no control and power. The only things they can really do is declare war, call upon, and it's got to be a legitimate war, call upon the elector counts during times of war, make sure that currency has not been messed up in some fashion or another. There's very little that
he honestly gets a lot more done as the elector count than he does as the emperor.
Absolutely. The emperor, he's a figurehead. He does not have a great deal of power. That's not what he does. His position is to be emperor and bind them all together and stop them from falling apart, literally summoning the elector counts. In many respects, that is his core power. Keeping the empire together and being a representative of the empire and everything that it stands for. He is a figurehead. And while Karl Franz has been massively upgraded over the course of multiple editions of Warhammer to be a massive statesman, in many respects, that's not because he's emperor. It's because he's Karl Franz.
Yeah.
Karl Franz has all of that. It's not his position that grants him the ability to do everything that he does. It's the fact he's a diplomat that means that he can get anything done at all.
Yeah, in the Empire's defense, a lot of the emperors who have used been allowed to get away with using their authority have done some terrible shit.
Yeah, totally.
Goldgather did some terrible things.
Absolutely.
Ted Barrera. Everyone expects the Sigmarite Inquisition. Yeah, they're usually not that surprising when they show up.
Yeah, they're not, are they?
You're honestly, your best witch hunters are the ones that go incognito to do investigation and stuff before they actually take action. James, I have a Silverhammer Witch Hunter NPC tracking the rogue wizard antagonizing the party.
Oh.
Would she intervene to keep the wizard alive to kill later, or
okay, I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Let me check this again. James. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Apologies. So I have a Silverhammer Witch Hunter. So nice and clear start. We've got ourselves a Templar of Sigmar. NPC. So it's not. So it's an NPC that she's or he's controlling. Tracking the rogue wizard antagonizing the party. So it's another NPC. So they're tracking a rogue wizard.
Would she intervene to save the wizard?
So would you intervene to keep the wizard alive or kill later? Why would you keep the wizard alive? Okay, it depends entirely on what we're discussing here. Rogue wizard could mean multiple things. If this is a rogue wizard who is a black magister, say, we're talking about a proper criminal. We're talking about someone who has been outlawed and who has their name up on bills with bounties posted for them. Please find Bob the Black Magister. Bad guy, seriously. He's currently holed up in some cave somewhere and he's certainly doing something terrible. This guy sucks. Would a Silverhunter Witch Hunter try to intervene to keep that wizard alive? No. To kill later? Absolutely not. In fact, if they were actively chasing them, it's very likely that this Hammer Witch Hunter would approach the PCs and say, look, we've got ourselves a shared goal. We both want the same thing here. I need to take this person down. They are dangerous as fuck. I am aware of how dangerous. I would almost certainly lose my life if I was doing this by myself. I need help. Me and my party, we're taking it down. Would you like to join us? We'd really appreciate the help. If there's a bounty involved, some of them might be completely above board. Look, there's a bounty involved. Some of them will be religious and they'll say, I don't care anything about the bounty. You can have the bounty. Help me out. Some will be, no, I need them to supply food for my people and I'm going to give half of it to my order. So whatever else is around, you can take for you and your party. But working together seems to be a very likely outcome, particularly because Silverhammer are Sigmarites. Sigmarites believe in working together for the benefit of the Empire. Their first thought is normally, contrary to how many might view them in many novels, their first thought is, let's work together.
Not a proper criminal. There is no bounty, but the wizard is suspected of having committed crimes, but hasn't been caught.
Ooh. Now we're talking.
See, I feel
that changes things.
Yeah, I feel like this witch hunter would genuinely want to use your party to deal with the wizard for them, because then they don't do anything illegal.
Yeah, so what we've got here is now a wizard that we don't have any proof for. There's no bounties. They're sitting inside Imperial law. to kill this individual is illegal. If the party attempt to kill them, then the party is in the wrong. Massively. It's illegal to kill people. That's just not allowed. Unless you are outside of Sigmar's law, unless you're an outlaw, killing someone is just not on. So if they did that, then the witch hunter is not in a position where they go, I need to take them in now, because let's be honest, they're a witch hunter. It's not really their job, but they'd probably go to a local magistrate and give evidence against them. They're murderers. They killed someone. Now, I can't say whether this person was a good person or a bad person. What I can say is they killed them. Now, was this person under investigation? Who cares? There'd be no judgment.
Your party would be, that party of PCs, which this is perfect for roleplay, would be very convenient fall guys for what that witch hunter maybe wants to have happen.
Now, let's say this witch hunter genuinely thinks that this person is a fallen witch, and is somebody who is working within the system but has broken the rules and is a bad guy. Now we're talking about the nature of the character of that witch hunter. Are they someone who believes that the ends justifies the means? Are they somebody who believes in justice? Are they somebody who believes in doing things the right way? Are they somebody that believes that doing things in any way, as long as it gets what you want, is okay? Different characters will respond in different ways. But as Sotek makes quite clear there, you do have yourself a really convenient patsy if that's what's needed. But equally, you've got a really convenient potential antagonist here if it's someone who is noble, upright, looks at it and goes, yeah, no, you can't just take that person down. And would they step in potentially to save them? Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the law and the character of your witch hunter.
Yeah, totally. Are they upstanding citizens of the Empire? And the answer is yes, they're an upstanding citizen of the Empire. If they see somebody's life in threat and they believe in the Empire working together, they'll step forward and they say, you can't do that. You can't just murder people. That's wrong. It's just wrong, man. And yeah, it's up to you where you think that character stands.
Downman, witch hunting organization seemed like a prime target for infiltration by Lamians. Yeah.
Yeah, and to also be targeting Lamians in both situations.
Used by Lamians to kill other Lamians.
Absolutely.
You would be genuinely shocked how many vampires kill other vampires by intentionally giving breadcrumbs to witch hunters or vampire hunters.
Absolutely. It's one of I think here, Dino Man, one of the words that I would be careful with is infiltration, because you don't need to infiltrate. To infiltrate is to expose yourself to danger, because you bring yourself into the light that they share, because you're now infiltrating a part of that light. You don't want to be in the light. You want to be in the shadow. Okay, and it's very easy to sit back from the shadow and to throw things in their direction, hopefully from some distance, and they pick them up and go, hey, what's this? And you might find that they're suddenly chasing down one of the Lamian's many enemies.
Yeah, one of the most successful witch hunters that ever lived and pulled off a genuine miraculous kill was oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head. Hold on, I just had it. Hold on. It was, fuck me. Ah, dang it. It jumped out of my head. It'll come back to me in a second. But it was the one that killed Peter von Karstein. So Manfred, when Vlad died, there were 5 vampires that fought over taking over Vlad's position. And Manfred, Peter was said to be one of the most dangerous because he was very clever and he was very smart. He stayed out of the way. And he was kind of doing what Manfred was doing. So the way Manfred dealt with him, because he didn't trust that he could just outright kill Peter, and also there were potential dangers, vampire politically in doing so, is that he literally just led a witch hunter of Sigmar to Peter's casket with a lot of very clever breadcrumbs, so that witch hunter managed to get up on him and stake him in the heart while he was asleep in his casket. And one of the most powerful von Karsteins was killed by just some guy. Hilarious.
Witch hunters for you, eh?
Yeah. It was Hel... Was it Yeah, it was Helmut von Hal. Of course, it was.
Of course,
von
it was a Van Hal.
Yeah, so that's actually a good segue here. There are a couple of famous, very, very famous witch hunters. The most famous dynasty of witch hunters, for very obvious reasons, are the Van Hals. Now you may go, wait, Van Hal, isn't that
Van Hal's Dance Macabre?
Yeah. So that is actually one of my favorite stories in the setting. Is that so? Where the Van Hals came from originally was the Necromancer Van Hal, who became this really, really big bad. Greatly advanced the like Van Helsing, yes. But like greatly advanced the magic of necromancy, made a lot of his own edits to Nagash's spells, and created some spells that are very widely used by vampires and necromancers to this day, such as Van Helsing's Dance Macabre. And he established himself as one of the most powerful necromancers the Empire had ever seen. The problem was that he was part of a very large family, many of which were noble, and did not appreciate the fact that their legacy had been horribly tainted by Mr. Frederick Van Hal. So many of the descendants and relatives, like cousins, descendants, etc., of Van Hal, are all men and women who end up becoming witch hunters to basically cleanse their family lane. They're so which works really well for them, especially as nobles, of that they're so bitter about the taint on their family lineage that they dedicate themselves to rooting out corruption, to basically act as a, see, I'm not corrupt. Our family's great. Our family is pure. I'm out here killing corruption, which has led to some of the most zealous, often secular. Most of them are not necessarily Sigmarites.
Many
actually,
of them
more
are
of them are
Morians.
Morites, I think.
Yeah, Morians. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, Morians, sorry. And they are often specialized vampire hunters rather than just kind of classic witch hunters. But there's at least 3 famous ones that have been around throughout the age. But they are by far, like, if you're like, oh, what family in the world has produced the most witch hunters? It's the Van Hals by a lot.
Yeah, and it's quite fun as well because they're associated in terms of the lore with bad guys, which is quite fun. Because they are 100% behind some of the best necromancy spells there are. Thanks, Van Hal.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
If you're ever dealing with Van Hals, there is definitely a stereotype with them where they go into the bar to get a drink and someone is talking and they're like, my name's Van Hal, and someone goes, oh, like the necromancer, and they punch that guy in the face reliably every time. Like starting a bar brawl, you know, that's what they do. But they're super fun. There's the one that of course killed Peter, which was Helmut. There's another one who actually led I don't know how he got this job. He must have been very impressive. He got the job to lead the siege of Blood Keep that actually chased out Walla Karkin, the first one, where they tore down the keep and defeated him, which lasted for years, by the way. But that was led by Von Hal, who was also a vampire hunter. And then there's another one that you'll find in Total War Warhammer if you play a Marcus Wolfhart campaign. He's one of the heroes you can pick up. And his gimmick is that he's actually from a story from Wolfrep's 2nd edition, I think the Vampire Hunter Career, where he was a Van Hal who decided to become a doctor rather than a witch hunter because he didn't want to follow in his family's legacy. And then his wonderful, beautiful wife was murdered by a vampire. So he went, God damn it! And he becomes a vampire hunter to go after the guy that killed his wife.
Fate, eh? You're getting dragged into the old family business whether you want to be there or not.
So that's fun. But let's see. I actually missed one here. Is there a Manon or Ulrich witch hunter? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's not one that's specifically called out, as in book 5. Yeah, there's a witch hunter of Manan. His name is Bob, and Bob likes to hunt down witches. So in that particular case, the answer is no. And the Cult of Ulrich, whenever you see NPCs or characters deployed, are almost always Knights of the White Wolf, or alternatively the occasional priest. And that's about it. That's often all they do with their NPCs for Ulrich, if they're not just people praising Ulrich on the front lines because they happen to be soldiers or mercenaries or something similar. But do they exist? The answer absolutely is yes. And you might go, well, where do they fit in? And the answer is they fit in because Ulrichans, for example, kill bad guys. That's what they do. It's a
Spoiler,
warrior
chaos
god.
is everywhere.
And chaos needs to be killed, which means they need their experts. They need people who know how to take down things that are tainted, things that are difficult to kill. And whilst that sometimes will just be the White Wolf soldier who done it in the past, other times it will be the Ulrican who has done this multiple times in the past in a different way because they're the experts. They've got their own witch hunters. And Manan and all of the sea witches, sea hags, and all the rest of that horror most certainly will have their own witch hunters that are brought to bear.
Yeah, and they're going to look different. You know, just like how you have the knightly orders of the different faiths and they appear very unique, you're going to have the same thing with the witch hunters where they're going to specialize in different things. Like your Morian witch hunters are more likely to be vampire hunters. Your Manon ones maybe are more likely to specialize in like sea witches or dealing with like cults of Stromfells. Cults of Stromfells are probably a very big focus of theirs.
Corrupted spirits of the deep, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you know, your witch hunters of Tal are going to be dealing with a lot of beastmen, a lot of the horrors of the forest and like spirits of the forest that have gone really wrong. Yeah. There's a lot of work to be. The witch hunter's job is never done. It is an endless job.
Yeah, totally. I mean, what you need to do is basically consider each one of the cults that you have present in your game, whether that's just the core 10 cults or whether you've gone for a far. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what Shalians will be doing.
Yeah, Shalian witch hunters are fun because remember, although they like worship the god, they're not like priests. They're not bound to the strictures of a god. Like a Shalian witch hunter can absolutely kill your ass.
Yeah, totally. And will. And you've got to remember that the strictures are for blessed priests and priestesses only. They're not for everybody in the cult. And not only that, everyone in the cult, including the ones who are blessed, break them all the time because we're human. And humans do human things, particularly when they're stressed or underneath particular pressure to do something that they believe is super important and must be done. But yes, consider each one of the cults and what they represent and who they consider to be their enemies. And it just naturally evolves into, and their witch hunters are, as in the people that they hunt down because they represent chaos effectively, and big C, small c, and witches and things that are difficult to kill under normal circumstances. Not monsters, but magical things generally. And each one of the cults, very quickly you go, oh, they're obviously just doing that. It's super easy. But again, remember that that's just one aspect of it. The secular side is where most of the witch hunters are. Yeah. And these are just people who are jobbing witch hunters, hunting down the wanted posters that say witch X and witch Y happens to be in the local area. Can anyone clear that out for however many silver pieces or gold that might be put on the line for that particular job?
Yeah. And to answer a question I'm sure some of you have had listening to all this, generally speaking, only the most zealous, stupid, or insane people often become witch hunters because chasing after witches is a fool's game.
Yeah.
Like
you generally have to have a reason.
Yeah, a damn good one. Like a regular person would not look at the bounties witch hunters tend to pursue and go, oh yeah, I could take that. They would look at that and go, fuck that. A witch? Someone that could just like pop my head by chanting some words? I'm not fighting that fucker. Like a witch hunter, those are people that tend to be prepared, that tend to do their research, and tend to be surprisingly educated.
Oh, they have to be, particularly if they're taking down something that's old or powerful or capable of magic. You need to know how to stop that. And you need to have something you can rely upon. And often you'll find that that will be others. One thing that I think is often missed, particularly because the witch hunter is often seen through the lens of either the battle game where it's just a single character, or alternatively a roleplay game where again it's a single PC. They forget that they often work as a group. They are working together, often with other lunatics for one reason or another, to bring these things down. Whether that is the PC group as a whole, who are effectively all witch hunters, or whether it's a witch hunter and their retinue, for want of a better description. Now it's sounding a bit more 40k. But these are people who have got a job to do. And when it's the cult ones, they're often the ones who have the stronger retinue behind them, realizing that their own individual skills might not be enough to do what they need to do as part of their holy duties. So as part of their holy duties, they'll often have bodyguards, people who are physically stronger. They will often have scholars, people who can look into the background of what it is that they're hunting in particular, they are broader than just simply the witch hunter, that individual with the cap and a couple of pistols and a bunch of charms sitting around their neck. They're often much more than that alone.
Yeah. Grabbing a couple more little super chats here. Ro, to rephrase, are there any areas of corruption witch hunters overlook? Anything that slips through the cracks? Also, what about Maxwell Silverhammer? That name sounds familiar.
Who's Maxwell Silverhammer? God damn it. This is
Hold on,
one that I
it.
don't know. Maxwell.
Apparently that's a song.
Is it?
Yes. Maxwell Silverhammer by the Beatles.
Okay,
Or
cool.
Steve Martin?
I feel like I'm an idiot for not knowing that. Am I going to have to listen to this song? Is this going to be another one of those? I've never heard it before. I listened to it and I'm like, oh no, it's that song. Ah, crap. I'm putting it on in the background here. You won't hear it because it's just going to be in my ear.
Yeah, I've never heard of this song in my life, but that's definitely what they have to be referencing.
Oh yeah, I know that song. Genuinely amusing. I was like, oh, that one. Anyway, are there any areas of corruption they overlook? Right. So this is a really broad question, and it's a broad question about a broad category of people. So each individual group, witch hunters of Sigmar, witch hunters of Shalia, witch hunters of any of the cults, witch hunters of a state organization or group, witch hunters that are acting almost like the Pinkertons, basically a group of witch hunters that you can employ. They're like mercenaries. Each of these will have their own strengths and weaknesses, areas that they literally overlook. Now you might go, wait, what do you mean? Because none of them are often looking. See, again, one of the big mistakes is thinking that they're by nature going into places and looking for witches. They're not. They're often pursuing the stories of witches or wanted notices or effectively following the trail rather than looking for a fresh trail. So it's not they've got area of corruptions that they overlook per se. It's just they're on the job chasing things down. Now, it doesn't mean that they're good at chasing that particular type of witch. They might be bad at it because it's outside of their standard remit. They might be very, very good at it because it's exactly what they do. The question here is much more broad, so I'd rephrase it more as, is there any types of witches who often don't get caught? And the answer is, yeah, frickin' loads of them. Loads of cults are almost impossible to pin down. There's tons of cults, for example, to Slaanesh, that just are the nobles, being nobles, having parties, having fun, and sometimes going too far. And they're never going to get caught unless somebody breaks the law. Big time. And I mean big time. Because the only way to catch them is to break the law. Makes it particularly difficult for Sigmarites, who also stand for upholding nobility and the law, because it's Sigmar's natural order. And they're then being asked to undermine it by taking out somebody, well, asked. They might believe they have to resolve it because they find one of them's a cultist, a witch that they have to take out. How do you do that? Do you break the law, meaning that you yourself are now a criminal? Do you not break the law and leave them in place? Basically, you're screwed no matter what you do. And that's good. So are there areas of corruption that they overlook? Or perhaps rephrase this as, is there areas of corruption that are really difficult to deal with? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. In all parts of Imperial society, and all of the different types of witch hunters are variably capable of responding to the different types of threats that they perceive or are deployed to resolve. Yeah, It's a toughie.
Yep. Is murder is bad an official stance of Lorebeards? Generally speaking, yes.
I mean, Super Orlok, yeah, usually.
Usually. There, I mean, there might be some very
murder's
specific
pretty
exceptions,
bad.
but generally speaking, yes.
I mean, yeah.
Psych 2416256. Hendrik Witch Hunter, have you reported all of your income? Witch! Honestly, witch hunters being used for like tax evasion is probably something that has happened multiple times.
Yeah, and getting off with stuff that they really shouldn't be getting off, welching on trade deals and getting away from it because you're using, for example, a mentalist type of magic. Mentalism being used to make people forget that they have been completely cheated. That is a crime. Handrich is upset. The trade rules have been broken. This witch needs to be hunted down and stopped. Every aspect of Imperial society has a god involved in it to some degree. And every cult around one of these gods is going to perceive that some types of witches are doing things that they find absolutely unacceptable. And the problem is when the state views it as acceptable and the cult doesn't. When the state says that what they're doing is fine and the cult says it isn't, state law matches cult law and we have antagonism and conflict. And conflict is at the core of most of the best stories. So if you're figuring out how to use your witch hunters and your witches in different ways, always think about how you can build and understand the core conflicts that are going to sit between the different groups, and then try to figure out how the individuals solve it, not how the whole cult fixes it. Whole cults are powerful. Individuals are the ones who have to make the decisions about the whole cults, and often they're weak or they're too stuck in their ways to make the correct decision, or too religious, or too filled with zealotry, or just too caught up in their own world to realize that the decisions they're making are going to kill a lot of people and they can't draw back from it. So think about the individuals and how they'll work.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of fun things to run through, just as we're approaching the last 30 minutes here. Yeah, I know, but so talking about the order, some specific orders of witch hunters that are like really well known, just because we've talked a lot about secular ones, but now we'll kind of dive into some of the famous ones. So you have the Order of the Silver Hammer. They're a particularly fun group because if you're dealing with them, especially within the universe, they have a lot of mysterious and mythological history of that. The Order of the Silver Hammer has...
The Order of the Silver Hammer is not the best name because the Order of the Silver Hammer is also the warrior wizards, the warrior priests, pardon me. So it's a bit broader than that. It might be better going for their full Templar name. So I'm going to quote it here because I had to bloody make it up. And the Ancient Initiatic and Holy Order of the Templars of Sigmar. There you go.
Yeah, so they are a portion of the Order of the Silver Hammer. Now, the witch hunters are rather amusing because of the Silver Hammer, because their history is mythologized, to put it very bluntly. The witch hunters believe...
Bring back to Sigmar.
Yeah, the witch hunters believe that they were established by Sigmar himself, which is very unlikely, but they believe that to their core. Yeah, they are definitely wrong, but they believe that.
The cult of Sigmar didn't exist at this point, at all.
They say there was a great man that good old. And here's how they play it: is that they say, well, we were a secret society, and Wolfgart Krieger, who was a man that lived during that time, was told by Sigmar to defend the realm against magic.
Let's also note a surprisingly modern name.
Yes. Good old Sigmar books just using modern German. Anyway, so supposedly Wolfgar Krieger, who was a real person, was told by Sigmar to defend the realm against magic, and he decided to do it in secret by establishing the witch hunters, which definitely did not happen, but the witch hunters claim this is how it happened. Then at some point in the next 1500-ish years, witch hunters started becoming a thing, but the Order of the Silver Hammer variant were a genuine secret society. They would be established as like a recognized force by the Grand Theogonist Seobold II. Seabold,
I think.
In 1682, nearly 1,000 years ago. Pretty impressive. Yep. So that's the first time they're officially recognized as part of the Order of the Silver Hammer.
Yeah. So the Order of the Silver Hammer by this point has been established for at least 600 years. So the Order of the Silver Hammer as warrior priests have been around since the foundation of the High Temple of Sigmar in Altdorf, which happened at the turn of the millennium, first millennium, when it was founded, and the core 4 orders of Sigmar were all in place by that date. So that's the Order of the Cleansing Flame, the Order of the Torch, the Order of the Anvil, and the Order of the Silver Hammer. all of those orders were in place. Each one of those orders has a different remit. The Order of the Torch are the priests. The Order of the Anvil are monks who look after Sigmar's word. The Order of the Silver Hammer are the warrior priests who go from place to place to place to place, spreading Sigmar's word and generally defending the places that don't have their own temples. And then, of course, you've got the Cleansing Flame, who are the Inquisitors, who police the other orders and, of course, the Empire as a whole. But within it, 600 years later, is the true founding of the ancient and initiatic order, regardless of their mythologized beginnings.
Yeah.
600 years after that, we get our first clear, and this secret society that had been kicking around for ages, which is relatively likely that they'd have some sort of witch huntery secret society, because it does sort of lie outside the normal laws.
A lot of what they were doing was illegal.
Illegal, yeah, is brought in by the Grand Theogenist of the time and established as a part of the Order of the Silver Hammer, an order that they then claim that they founded.
Yeah, because they're like, oh yeah, we were there with Sigmar fighting against Nagash, because that was our remit. And it's like, sure it was. So anyway, so 1682, they're officially established and recognized. But they would still be fairly shadowy, and a lot of the ways that they operated was fairly secret. And remember, it was the Grand Theogenist that established them, not the nobles, not an emperor, the Theogenist. So they were still very much working in the shadows until another 600 years later, which this was the time when they were likely at their absolute strongest, because the Empire was in shambles. The Empire was a mess, and witch hunters were, like Andy was saying earlier, were able to operate a lot with impunity, because they could do something horrible in an area, kill whoever they needed to kill, and if they ended up getting in trouble, they could just run to someone else that was on the opposite side of a civil war, and they were functionally protected.
You also got to remember that when they were first founded, let me just get the exact date, because Attilia separated herself from the Empire. So that's Attilia the First, who creates the Attilian Empire in the mid 1300s. And the Age of Three Emperors starts in the 1500s. Okay, so by the time that
they were already in civil war when the Grand Theogenist created them.
So when they're first created, the Grand Theogenist is in a position of extraordinary power in a very small part of the Empire, which is the electoral part of the Empire. So you're talking Altdorf, Nuln, down to the Wasteland, as it would be later, down into Marienburg. But up in the north, it's all Ulrican. Over in the west, it's all Talite, with pockets of Sigmarism, pockets of other gods all over the place. But it's in this time of proper turmoil that a bunch of lunatics are brought in and added to the cult. And I think in many respects shows that the Witch Hunters founding is in a time of massive turmoil. And their history then changes the history of the cult of the history of the Order of the Silver Hammer entirely within their own order, where they say, yeah, we've been here since the beginning. We're the best. Everyone else is much worse than us. Sigmar gave us our remit, not the Grand Theogenist. We've been here since the beginning. The entire thing sounds like a bunch of fanatics who were brought into the cult in a time of proper disorder. And they are made a Templar order, an actual militant order. What does that mean? They went to war.
Yep.
So they are organized as a warrior group. And what's their job? To hunt down witches, probably Ulricans and Talites while we're at it.
Yeah, to be clear, we're only talking about the Sigmarite witch hunters right now, because they're the only ones with a really well-established history. So 600 years later, like we were talking about with Andy, their power gets fucking checked by Magnus the Pious. Because Magnus knows they are a problem.
Yeah, I think it completely turns round. So we've probably had ourselves 600 years of the worst Sigmar stories. Let's be as clear as we can be about this. Sigmarism was not well liked in many parts of the Empire because of the extremes that it often led to. The witch burnings, the burnings of the innocent. That's not what Sigmar should be about, but it happened again and again and again. And if you take a look over in Talabheim, where Talism was at its heart, they completely banned Sigmar. No, none of his religion here, because he is poison. We're starting our own empire. Time of two emperors begins as Attilia declares herself separate to the rest of the empire. And it's during that separation, and another schism comes later as the Wolf Emperors separate up in Middenheim. And it's during the Great Schism that the Templars are formed in their modern version, sorta. And when Magnus comes along, he sees them for what they are. And that is unchecked murderers who work as a secret society within the cult of Sigmar. And they are not checked by imperial law. Now, the easy thing to do would be to disband them and to say, this is dangerous and it needs to be brought to a halt. But he did something very different. He moved them into the light and he went, this is our witch hunters. This is their job. And if they're pure and pious and do what Sigmar says, this is how they should work within the realms of Sigmar. Don't you agree, Preceptor? Witch Hunter General. And they're like, yeah, I suppose we do.
Yeah, it's worth noting. Right. Yeah, if it's worth noting for a couple people that 2 examples leading up to the time of Magnus of how scary the fucking witch hunters were able to be is that in 2011, I see. So during the time of 3 emperors and things are crazy. And things are bad.
Like 2011 is when it's collapsed even worse. Now the
things are really, really bad. Johann Bernhardt of the Order of the Silver Hammer executes an elector count.
Yeah.
Beyond
count. Against the law. Yeah.
And
it's just crazy.
And in 2111, this one's actually really fun. A Grand Duke of Middenheim, not a Sigmarite witch hunter, but still a witch hunter. But he's a Grand Duke that happens to be part of one of these secret societies. Hangs the entire population of the town of Rotebach. He kills everyone. Men, women, children. He hanged everyone because there was no checks.
Yeah, so Magnus comes along and he doesn't disband them. He takes what they are and he brings them into the light and he codifies them. And he makes them a part of what is quite bluntly a necessary control of the witches inside the Empire. Because the time of Magnus the Pious is not like, 200 years before his time. The time of Magnus the Pious is a time of pure, unadulterated magic rising and a terrible storm of magic. Wizards are popping up where there was no wizards. Witches are coming out of the crevasses from nowhere. He's established a college of magic with the elves, many of which were rogue witches. The worst, perhaps, examples of rogue witches that have come basically with his amnesty to come in. And he's scared that they themselves could turn on the empire that they've helped defend. So they make a very public, open, we have got Sigmarite witch hunters. They're not hidden. They've got this great past. Possibly it goes all the way back to Sigmar, don't you know? They've got this great history, and they are a militant order, and they're going to help us police these witches. It's not just, though, he was a clever guy who was bringing them to the light. He was also doing something else, pacifying the Sigmarites, because there are going to be extremists on the Sigmarite side who are going to be in his court every day saying, what's going on with these witches? Witches were illegal, and you've made a college of magic, to which he'll reply, well, you're absolute mental fanatics. They're now part of the system, and they're there to police them. What's your problem, man? I brought everything together. This works. So he took a completely febrile situation that ultimately could have just blown up in his face, and he took what looked like utter hardline fanatics, brought them into the fold, and showed them how they could work together as witches and witch hunters on the same side.
Yeah. Now, you may hear all that and go, that sounds too convenient. That sounds too easy. And it was. Because in the Witch Hunter's Handbook, there's a fun historical note that our Witch Hunter guide gives us, which was that when the order was restructured by Magnus the Pious, there were some elements that did not like losing their power. Because 2 years later, 2 years, so in 2304, Magnus establishes the colleges of magic and the Witch Hunter orders and all this stuff. 2 years later, in 2306, is the year, what's known as the Year of Purges, when the elements of the witch hunters that did not like what Magnus had just done to them, trying to get them under control, go around murdering, and they killed about 600 people in Reichland including an archlector of the cult of Sigmar. This leads, surprise, to their censure, which leads to the basically the big boss, the Lord Protector of the order, Otto Springer, to be tried and executed for profound lunacy.
Yeah, and it's crazy. But you've also got to remember that this is a difficult time where magic is still high, where chaos has led an enormous army assaulting all of the old world, where Kislev has been ravaged, the northern coasts of the empire have been broken. The empire itself was in a state of civil war and fractured, and Magnus has bound it together. And his rule is, for all it's on books, really strong, it's really, really, really close to falling apart. And there's all manner of groups that are trying to express themselves in the way that they did before and test his rule. And Magnus was known for bloodily resolving issues. So, for example, when the witch hunters rose up and basically said, fuck you and your rules, he went, and now you're all dead. And he does exactly the same with, say, for example, some of the important noble families of the Reichland. The Reichland, which had their own established prince who ruled them, had themselves a bunch of bloodlines, had themselves a separate place called the Vorbigland, which was ruled by a king. He summoned that king and killed him. And anyone who stood against him, he removed. He removed the Prince of Altdorf and put in his own man in place. It's where the birth of the Holzwig-Schließen family bloodline comes from. Magnus the Pious replacing the prince. Everything changes under Magnus. And he does it in a way that's deeply unpious to the outside view. But equally, you could argue from the Sigmarite perspective, he did it in the most pious way you could. It was all about the empire working together. And if you didn't, well, you were on the end of his sword, his hammer, the burning pyre, whatever it might be. And the witch hunters were a core component of him reclaiming control of the empire, both from the perspective of giving the Sigmarites an excuse to accept the witches, but also an excuse to give the Sigmarites to support him. He took their fanatics and legitimized them. And when they broke their word, he was now in a position to say, well, you said you'd keep your word and you didn't. We have to put them down and now we control them. And he takes control and the order of the witch hunters changes. And this has happened several times through their history where the witch hunters have gone from being powerful to weak to powerful to weak. And those particular Templars were largely brought to heel, which is, I would argue from Magnus's perspective, a very good outcome.
Yeah, witch hunters... One of the things that's really interesting is that witch hunters could be used from a historical perspective, especially if you're a character in universe that likes studying history. They tend to rise heavily in power during scares and during times of uncertainty, because they are a militant attempt to crack down on disorder. Yeah,
and it works well. And if you are using the Templars of Sigmar, the one aspect of it which is easy to forget is that they are a militant order. They are Templars. They are not simply witch hunters as we understand the concept, which means that they are very used to not just gathering a big mob of pitchfork-wielding lunatics to bring down the local noble because they wouldn't hunt down the witch. They're used to leading them to war. They are warriors. They are trained to fight. They are trained to kill. They are trained not just to inquisit and to find a witch or some equivalent. They are trained to properly go to war against what they perceive to be as bad guys. So don't just use them as the local threat. Use them as somebody who will actually turn a group of people that might be against your party or the story you're building into a legitimate fighting force.
Yeah, where a lot of warrior priests or priests of Sigmar are not super fans of flagellants, witch hunters love them because they're easy as fuck to manipulate.
Yeah. Turn those guys into a complete force.
Yeah, because you probably already know this, but in case out there you don't, the time when the witch hunters really stepped into being probably the most powerful they ever were in the entire history of the Empire was in 1999 IC during the Mordheim Crisis. because the Grand Theogenes looked to the witch hunters and said, go get, not destroy, but go get me all of that weird stone, because it's money. And here's a divine edict from me that says you can kill anyone that gets in your way. Because the city is corrupt. Also, those Sisters of Sigmar, if you happen to encounter them, I don't like them. Kill them if you can.
Bloody hell.
Which, like, fuck that Grand Theogenes. That Grand Theogenes sucked. But anyway, so they went over there, and they were one of the most numerous groups. It was this giant squad that was trying to take control of Mordheim under religious orders, and it was witch hunters, warrior priests that were aiding them with like their blessings and stuff,
flame.
And flagellants.
Yep.
And also warhounds, which, you know, spooky. But like, they are, at the end of the day, a lot of people, I think of them too much. At the end of the day, they are more like a brutal police enforcer group than they are anything else. Which is not a religious role, it's just a role.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's your Templars. They are a group of, an arguably ancient group of Sigmarites.
We were there to fight Nagash, we swear.
Of Sigmarites who rose in a time of deep turmoil in the Empire and were fanatical in their hunt to wipe out what they perceived to be threats to the empires they sought. But this is the time of 3 empires, so that meant the other empires as well. And they were on the front line of the war. They have been legitimized, and they were a militant order. So they were often on the front line facing off against Ulricans and Talites. They were the people they were killing. Get that in your head. This was Civil War time.
I will note, the Sulcanites are the worst. Like, everything we're saying, dial it up to like a gajillion. The Sulcanites are the most evil inquisitor, but because they're full-on inquisitors. The Sulcanites are scary motherfuckers down in Talea.
Yeah, Sulcan. He's definitely a god that's worth discussing at a later point.
At a later point,
yeah, because there's a lot to say about that. Sulcan is a good deity.
Yeah, they're different but very similar.
Yeah, there's a bit of a conflation there with the Order of the Cleansing Flame, which the Inquisitors over with.
Good little question for Andy, actually. Any info on the Witch Hunter Emperor? Because there was an emperor that was colloquially known as the Witch Hunter Emperor.
Who's that? That's not what that's jumping off in my head.
Hold on.
Okay, I'm going to have to look something up.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I know there's an emperor.
Okay, where are you getting that one from, Super Orlock? Because I don't know where that one comes from. Doesn't.
Hold on, I'll get it.
What source have I skipped in my head this time?
I'll get it. Oh god, it's just on the tip of my tongue. It's just on the tip of my tongue.
That's really annoying.
Joachim II in 852 IC. Little is known about him, but he was known as the Witch Hunter Emperor. You know what? That probably means he was part of the secret society. Would be my bet.
I'm going off and checking the old Emperor's document.
That might be literally the only thing that's written about him, is that he's just known as the Witch Hunter Emperor. I would bet.
What's the date?
856, I think.
Okay, so that's when Sigismund the Fourth.
Sorry, 852. 852.
852. So Sigismund the Fourth.
Yeah, so he takes over after Sigismund.
That's tough to do. Sigismund ruled for over a decade. He took the throne in 850.
Oh, sorry.
God damn it.
He's circa 852.
Okay, cool. What's the source? This is what I don't know, and I hate not knowing something.
I know this one. He is only mentioned. So in the big red book for 8th edition, when you get to, there's a section for the emperors of the empire on the margins, and it's just a bunch of named emperors with nothing about them. It's just fun little.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So we don't know why he's called that.
Was that 8th edition?
I think it was 8th. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on. I actually have my 8th book right here.
So my answer for that one is I don't have anything on him, Super Orlock. I had forgotten about that reference entirely. He's not even in my Emperor document, which is really disappointing. So I'm going to go check that one up afterwards, and I'm going to update my stuff so I've got it in my notes.
Hold on, I've got it.
So you get the last one out, because this is important shit. We've got an Emperor, Witch
I'm
Hunter,
so
Emperor,
glad you mentioned
we
that
can't
before the end
miss
of the
this.
stream. Is he on here? So there's let's see.
Yeah, so
no, he's
so
not
from
mentioned it.
Zalmoxis, make a Witch Hunter Emperor stream. You know what? That could be a fun
That could
one.
be fun. Dang
Especially if
it.
we've got a picture.
Yeah, this was the page I'm thinking of, but he's not mentioned on this page.
Okay, so he's not on that page.
Yeah, but I'm trying to figure out what. Is there a different emperor? Let's see. 8. No, he's not in that one. Is it?
So my memory wasn't that bad, because I didn't remember him being in that book.
Yeah,
so that's the sort of shit I normally latch onto.
I was gonna say I'm pretty sure he's literally a blink and you miss it reference.
Oh, I now need to know where this one's from. Okay, so Super Orlok, you brought it up, didn't you? Yeah, Super Orlok, you brought it up. Where did you bring it up from? Is it something you read in a wiki, or is it something you read in a book somewhere? Because I'm really interested to know this one, because it's not one that I have.
Oh my god, this is making me mad now. Because he's on the wiki page, but I don't think they cite a.
So is he on the wiki page in the list of emperors?
Wait, there are 2 Sigismunds the Fourths. Oh my god. Joachim the Second. God, they didn't source this one.
No, of course they didn't.
Normally they're really good about sourcing them, but here, let me scroll down to what sources they do list.
So while you're doing that, given the time, I'm going to dive into a quick.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. While I burrow through this real fast.
Those hunters, whether it is our witch hunters from the cult of Sigmar, whether it's witch hunters from one of the other cults, whether it's witch hunters who are simply hunting witches for money, chasing a bounty, and have the right to do so because it's been given to them, granted to them by one of the Grand Provinces. Witch hunters come in many types. The minority are the ones that are most famous. As is often the case, they're the ones that shout the loudest. They have the novels. They have models for them. So we know them best. Whether you know them from Warhammer Quest, whether you know them from Warhammer Fantasy Battle, whether you know them from Vermintide, the witch hunter as the stereotype that we know from movies from the past, that we know from various sources, our almost pilgrim style hat with our big comet on our pistols. Whilst they may be the most famous, they are not the most common that you will find out there. The most common witch hunter that you will find out there is someone who is hunting down a bounty for a witch, then desperately trying to get coin in almost certainly undesirable circumstances. And that is the characters that you will most commonly be dealing with if you play, for example, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. But there is no reason that we shouldn't dive into all the other cult versions as well, because those are the ones that I would suggest are forgotten the most. For we know our Sigmarite witch hunters. We know of Salkin and his burning flame. We know of the Order of the Cleansing Flame from Sigmar, but we don't really discuss much about, say, Manan and his witch hunters, Tal and their witch hunters, Raya and her witch hunters. What are they? How do they work? And they're questions that we've dabbled our way through the course of this stream and hopefully given you at least some ideas for, particularly cults that you might not imagine have them, like, say, the cult of Shalia, who absolutely do have witch hunters who are hunting down Nurgle sorcerers and more. I'll get it right after I finish my...
I know what he's from now. I know what he's from now.
Excellent. Okay, loving that you found it. So that gives us a host of different types of witch hunters that we can use in our games. The most famous, though, is that militant order of Templars. And that militant order of Templars from the cult of Sigmar look like the witch hunters we all know and love, because they're the ones that have been most commonly used by Games Workshop. And they have a long storied history, at least 1,000 years old, possibly as much as 2,500 years old. And this order has been with the cult of Sigmar for so long that for many it becomes synonymous with the cult. Indeed, many just call their order the Order of Sigmar, because they represent many of what some people believe is Sigmar's core ideals of hunting down greenskins, of hunting down witches, of hunting down chaos. Because ultimately, right from the beginning of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay's first edition to the end, witch hunters have always had one core remit, and that is hunting chaos. So what are witch hunters in Warhammer? They're chaos hunters. They hunt heresy. They are the ones who are looking to bring fire to that which is bringing taint to the world around them. And witch hunters, for all we focused on the Empire, are an almost universal career. They are found all over the Warhammer world. Dwarves have their own equivalents. Elves have their own equivalents. And they are hunting down the corruptors in their own societies. They are often seen as the inquisitors, the auditors of what it is to be someone within their own cultures. So no matter what you're doing with your own individual stories out there, they're a fun addition that you can play with that doesn't require that you play a pistol-wielding lunatic from the Cult of Sigmar. You can play almost anything as long as you work your way through. So where was it from?
So it's from the recorded history of Luther Harkin. And also the wiki is dumb, and this is why you should never trust the wiki. Because the wiki says that the wiki says Joachim II ruled circa 852. That's wrong. In the original Luther Harkin story, it's 876, I see.
Okay, 876 fits perfectly.
And the story is that the reason Luther Harkin fled the Empire along a boat that left the Empire and was attacked by Norscan raiders, which then ended up getting lost in Lustria, was because Harkin claims that he was fleeing the persecution of the witch hunter emperor Joachim II.
Okay, makes sense. So he's called the witch hunter because he was hunting down people like that. Makes total sense. He probably wasn't anything to do with the order at all then.
Yeah, no, he probably is like the technical definition of a witch hunter, but not actually related to the witch hunters.
Totally. All of the emperors have got epithets. Okay, so an epithet is a name that the emperors are given to basically characterize, and often given them after death, like Magnus was the Pious. We were discussing earlier Sigismund the Fourth. He was the Grey, and he was from Dratvold. If you go for Jurgen is he Jurgen the First? Looks like it. He was the Opulent. Or if you go with bloody Beatrice, the Monumentally Cruel. There's all sorts of different emperors and empresses that you'll find out there, all with their own epithets. And it's just an epithet. He's the witch hunter because he was notorious for hunting down what we would consider to be the targets of witch hunters today.
I would bet you $1 billion that modern witch hunters claim he was one of them.
Oh, damn straight. They 100% would do that. Skaven Slayer, Rat Slayer, who knows who that guy is?
Yeah. Just want to cut out a couple of quick comments real fast. Man like Pegasus, what about the Action and Watchers of the Night? So as of Total War, because Total War has changed them rather significantly, because we used to have the Chekists, which were more like the Secret Police, witch hunter types. They got removed as far as we know, and they have been functionally replaced with, if you're out in the rural areas dealing with hunting forces of corruption out there, that is the Akshina. The Secret Police within Kislev City itself and the urban areas are known as the Watchers in the Night, but they are the private enforcers of the Tsarina. I would say the Akshina are probably closer to what you would understand as witch hunters, but they operate in much more rural settings than your typical witch hunters, but they're very similar.
Yep.
Yeah, for dwarfs, there's a group known as the I think it's the Order of the Guardians, or like just the Guardians or something like that. They're a force of Gazul that are mentioned.
Gazul.
Yeah, they're mentioned to have occurred in response to the Night of the Restless Dead, when undead rose up everywhere, and they're basically vampire hunters, technically. You've also got like the Swordmasters of Hoeth are the closest thing among the high elves to witch hunters that they specialize in tracking down like the cults of pleasure and executing people and all that stuff. Dark elves, it's your assassins of Cain. The assassins of Cain, a lot of people do not realize that they are very good anti-chaos specialists. And they kill a lot of chaos baddies in Nagaroth when Marathi allows those elements to get caught out. or they're operating without Marathi's approval. The Cainites will find them and kill them because the Cainites fucking hate chaos. The Wood Elves, the closest equivalent, would probably be there we
go. Can confirm Winds of Magic. Winds of Magic.
Oh,
Oh,
I hate that
so
book.
Winds of Magic, that book has made another mistake. Yeah, so Winds of Magic has overwritten a previous emperor by doing that.
Yeah, that
I
should
hate
be.
it when they do that. They haven't done their proper research.
Yeah, well, that's not a big surprise based on some of their other books.
Oh man, that annoys me. Winds of
yeah,
Magic, I shake my fist
Yeah,
at you.
that date is wrong. It should be 876. Based on the original source. They just got the date wrong, which they have done in a lot of their books. Go watch my video on the Dwarf Player's Guide if you don't believe me, because that book, holy shit, did it fuck up the timeline. But anyway, so yeah, I would personally say they got the date wrong because it heavily overwrites an actually really well-known emperor who does something really important because he explores various lands outside of the empire. He's a really important emperor that needs more than 2 years to do what he does.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually a good point. Actually, I've got my book right here, so I'm going to grab it real quick so I can read the passage. For the Empire of Man. Here we are. If I go to the Witch Hunter real quick. Characters. Oh yeah, I forgot they made the Harbingers of Doom a character. That's so silly. Oh wait, no, it would be in the Forces of Order book, wouldn't it? Hold on, I've got that right here too. There it is. Forces of Fantasy, not Forces of Order. Let's see. If I go, we've got Demigryph Knights, the War Altar, which always makes me kind of sad because they were supposed to be a lot cooler. Witch Hunters. Witch Hunters. The Empire is a land torn asunder by civil war and besieged by myriad evil threats. In such an environment, should come to no surprise that many churches that vie for
they've done it again.
The faithful servitude of the citizens would take it upon themselves to hunt out evil. Thus, witch hunters roam the land in service of all the great churches and temples, all intent on casting out that which their patrons consider most evil. Zealous Templars of Sigmar hunt mutants, heretics, and witches, whilst fanatical priests of Mor seek out necromancers and vampires. Yet for all the diversity shown by witch hunters, one thing remains constant: their arrival in an isolated town provokes fear and bloodshed. Which is fairly accurate.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, nothing much there. The only thing I would pull out is the word churches.
Man, that's the word church like crazy in this section.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, maybe things have changed yet again.
We'll see. What's funny is we'll see how long that lasts before they change back. But anyway.
Yeah.
Games Workshop. You never get old. All right. Anyway.
So we've got a couple of super chats to finish off on before we go.
Yep. Boop. Necromancer's Coleman. Now I want to see a Renald Witch Hunter.
It'd be nice to get a good one.
Crooked Finger. Yeah.
Yeah, I did the Crooked Fingers for that. Work really well.
Final Flesh Flood. Is it common or uncommon for witch hunters to work with members of other races? An elf or a dwarf for starters? Sure. I wouldn't say. I would say when it's convenient or when the situation like allows for it, they will. But it's relatively. I mean. Look at Victor Saltzpyre. He works with an elf and a dwarf. He bitches about the elf a lot, but still works with her. He bitches a lot, but still works with her. And I think Saltzpyre is actually a fairly good guide.
Yeah.
Psych. What is a Tomb King Witch Hunter? A Lich Priest? It would probably be more equivalent to a Tomb Guardian of sorts. Like the various members of the Tomb Guard, but in a more official. I could see the Tomb Heralds might actually operate that position. More, it would be someone that the Lich Priest sends out to go do it, rather than the Lich Priests themselves.
Yeah, chaos manifests in different ways in different places. So how exactly it gets rooted out? I mean, rooted out amongst the undead is a very different kettle of fish.
Yeah, well, like when they were alive, someone would have done it.
And back then it'd be very different, yeah.
Yeah.
Blue,
just joining now. We'll watch tomorrow, but one thing I need to say before watching the stream, Witch Hunter or the bad guy into stream, signed to totally unbiased head to witch.
Yeah. So, Bloombo, the Witch Hunter. So I'm going to, take a slightly different view here and say that Witch Hunters are very easy to turn into bad guys.
So
very easy. And it's reached the point now where the standard is for the Witch Hunter to be the bad guy. But if we look at the Warhammer world and everything that it offers, there are too many legitimate bad guys for the witch hunters to not have work doing good guy stuff. Which would suggest that unlike the real world, where witch hunters were legitimately bad guys, mostly, even the good ones, because they were wrong. In the Warhammer world, they're not. Corruption is real. Corruption is something that needs to be faced. Magnus the Pious brought the witch hunters into the light because they were needed. And I would suggest that in Warhammer, one of the biggest mistakes many make is automatically going with the obvious trope, which is witch hunters are genuinely relatively idiotic bad guys who are stuck in their ways, can't think outside of the box, are bloody-minded idiots who let their faith lead them by their nose to murdering innocents, where the truth of the situation is probably much more nuanced. Now, does that mean that there aren't those who are corrupted, those who are misled, those who are just lying to themselves, those who are psychopaths? Of course not. It's the Warhammer world. All of those things exist and more. It's a horrible place. But that does mean that Sigmar and his cult, all the other cults and their witch hunters, they're ones who are pursuing an anti-corruption stance. Big C corruption, not small c. Oh, it's a bit corrupt. Proper chaos shit. Then, no, they are genuinely the good guys. And I would suggest that the obvious route is probably the one that we should, in Warhammer at least, be perhaps reappraising and figuring out how we can use those stereotypes in different ways to tell stories that people don't expect. Because everybody expects the witch hunter to be the bad guy.
Yeah, and one thing I would say is keep in mind that the deepest truth behind the witch hunters is that the Empire needs them. It needs them. Now, it needs them to do a good job, but it does need them. Just grab a quick last couple comments, then we'll wrap up. First ever comment on YouTube. It made it on air. Welcome, Matt Kelly. Hope you had a great day.
I just want to pick up Bloomblay's comment there. See, that's why I needed to say it before watching the stream, because Annie's going to convince me that the guys chasing me are useful good guy. Damn nuance.
And Vera, I think, also has a really good comment here, which is, I imagine it's a profession where it's easy to become a bad person too. You're feared and have to use force. It's easier to steal yourself. Lots of room for nuance.
Yeah, agreed wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I will say, just the last thing I'll say, and then we're done, is that for me, I'm playing a witch hunter in my Wolfert campaign that's been going on for 2 years now, and it's been a ton of fun. It's been an interesting struggle for me because I'm not used to playing a character that's that zealous and also kind of mean, to put it very bluntly. And for me, one of the things that's been really interesting is my witch hunter is convinced that he is a good person and he wants to be a good person, but he believes that in order for the good thing to happen, he has to do terrible things like torture, because torture and intimidation are a core part of the witch hunter kit. And it's great because there have been times where my witch hunter, like, because some of the party members have influenced him to be a nicer person, he's tried being nicer, but because that's not a skill set he's very developed in, and he tries to like charm someone, he usually fails and it makes things worse. And he's like, fuck, I really only understand how to get things done the way I've been raised to get things done, which is by being really fucking scary and really fucking violent. And it eats at him. And it's really fun to play that. Though it's very challenging. I would not recommend it for newbie role players.
Certainly an arc there as well to come to the conclusion that maybe he's wrong.
Yep, yeah, and that is an absolute crisis of faith he is having, especially during Power Behind the Throne, which is messy. Very messy. Anyway.
Yeah, totally. I get that. So thank you everyone for turning up. That was our rambling, sprawling look through all the different types of witch hunters that you can find in mostly the Empire, but we've also gently suggested how it could be handled elsewhere too. They are, as we finally concluded, everybody's favorite bad guys who perhaps, because Warhammer is used to turning tropes upside down on their heads, maybe some good guys could be actually brought back into the focus here. And how could that manifest? And it almost certainly wouldn't be following the standard tropes we know for witch hunters. But as we've discussed throughout this, they come in all different types, from different cults, from state-sanctioned examples, from more bounty hunter-esque style witch hunters. There's lots of different ways we can deploy these characters. So what you want to do with them in your games is, of course, for you to decide. And we don't know what we're doing on Wednesday yet, do we?
I have an idea. And
let's
I
not
can
say that until I'm after we're done, just in case I don't like the idea.
It is basically, if I check my dates, it is the Geheimnisnacht stream.
Okay, you've got an idea. Let's find out what it is. Geheimnisnacht stream.
Let's build a vampire.
I like building vampires. I'm already sold. I'm well up for that. Let's go.
That'll be fun. That'll be great.
Yeah, that'll be fun. We're going to build a vampire this Wednesday, and it's going to kick ass. Chew gum or blood or necks, or possibly they'll just suck at your life force, depending on what it is that we build.
All right,
and of
these
course,
are all
when it
sounding
comes to a
vaguely
build
dirty.
that,
We should go.
we are building it with you, which means you're going to be making all of the core decisions as we work our way, building ourselves what will hopefully become one of the coolest goddamn vampires you've ever seen in Warhammer. So that's this Wednesday at 10 p.m. UK time, which I've been told is not the 10 p.m. I thought it was because of bloody daylight savings and all that bullshit.
Yeah, the good news is this will be. We only have to do that for the next 2 streams, and then we have our daylight savings, and then we'll be back on the
and
schedule.
it all catches up again. So until then, we bid you all an adieu. We will see you for Vampires on the Wednesday. Until then,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.